Hello and welcome to the third and last day of Adobe DITAWORLD 2022, the world's largest DITA online conference for marketing and technical communication professionals. We are very excited to have you all back for what is now the 7th edition of Adobe DITAWORLD. Many of the nearly 6,300 content professionals worldwide who registered this time have been with us since 2016. We indeed had another great 2 days of the conference. Martina Navratilova inspired us all with her welcome note on day 1. And Amit Ahuja with his welcome note yesterday. And Vivek Kumar will kick off day 3 in a few minutes. Many Adobe customers and our partners have shared their knowledge and experience with us and gave amazing insights, and it will be the same today. And in the highly active chat, things took off on both days, and we are looking forward to it today as well. My name is Stefan Gans, and I'm the Senior Worldwide Evangelist for Technical Communication at Adobe. And with me is TechCom superstar Matt Sullivan as my much appreciated co-host and co-moderator. Hello, Matt.
Thanks, Stefan. I'm fired up to be here with you again today, and hi to everyone with us online on this last day of DITAWorld 2022.
So, it's going to be another exciting day. Enjoy it. Be active in the chat, exchange ideas, ask questions, and be wild and wonderful. And with that, I want to hand over to Vivek Kumar, Director of Products for the Technical Communication Solutions at Adobe. Over to you, Vivek.
Hello and welcome everyone to the day 3 of Adobe Data World. Hope it has been great so far. So let me touch upon something which I talked about last year, human and machine, especially the artificial intelligence part of it. So this is probably the most important part of human body. This is the CPU. This is where all the computing, learning, and all the instructions everything happens here, and the entire body functions accordingly. So let's see this particular section of the brain where the auditory cortex are, and it helps us hear. So all the signals go to this particular part of the brain, and it helps us hear. And what the scientists did was on some of the animals, they experimented, they disconnected that particular part and added the optical nerve to this. And the same part of the brain started seeing. So instead of hearing, it started seeing. It's really fascinating. And why and they did all other experiments, right? Different kind of experiments. And what they were up to was, does the brain function uniformly, or different part of the brain functions differently, right? And what the conclusion was, that it functions uniformly. The learning of the brain happens uniformly, in all sections, in all parts. So how does it work? So at the kind of micro level, the brain has neurons, right? And it's like all interconnected. So signals from one neuron go to the other, and so on. Right? So the signal coming into the inputs to the neuron, they are called dendrites, and they come from other neuron. And neuron does computing, and after computing, it gives out the signal through axon to other neurons, and that is where the output happens. The scientists, especially the computer science one and the artificial intelligence scientists, so they looked at it and they said, okay, can we make use of this uh, for the artificial learning? Especially this was quite prevalent in 1980s and 90s, and the area of computer science which came up from this was neural network, right? The artificial intelligence area. And on the left hand side, if you see, those are like, you can take them as dendrites, the signal coming in, and the red circles are the neurons, right? So they can be different layers of neurons. So the signals coming in, it goes to all the neurons. Neuron does computing, and then it passes on to another, and then we can say that toward the end, it has done the computing. It creates the output and then sends it out. For example, in a human body, it may send a signal to the leg to move, and so on. Right? Uh, the structure of the neuron need not be this way. You can have more number of neurons, and it can have a more layers also. That is called deep neural network. So if you go deeper, it is so to a great extent. If you have more number of neurons, it gives us a better result, but it doesn't scale proportionally that way. At some point of time, you have to weigh your ROI, because it becomes very computationally very costly. So whether it is justified, or whether that kind of result we are getting or not. Right? So what can it do? Where can we make use of it, especially in the teccom world? Right. So fascinating thing is it can do something like this. So you have a word AM sites, and you minus marketing, and you add teccom to it. It'll give you AM guides. Wow. We know that computer can do only computing, it does maths, but can it do the same thing for words, and in a meaningful way? How can it do, right? So it seems very fascinating. Let's look at it just from a computing perspective, what the computer is. How can it do something like this? So this is a table, all the words which I used in last slide. So they are in that first row. So AM site, let's give it some properties. So is it a CMS? And between 1 and 0 and 1, 0 is like no, and 1 is yes. Is it a CMS? Yes. Does it deal with experience? Can we associate that word with it? Yes. Data? No. Enterprise? Yes. Enterprise class solution. End to end? Yes. Similarly, marketing, is it a CMS? No. Is it related to experience? Yeah, you can say that, because experience is quite important over there. Data, no. Some people can say yes, but just for simplicity's sake, I have put a 0. Enterprise, yeah, it is kind of argue that it is used in the enterprise world, but it's not enterprise solution, and so on, not in the same league as AM site. So 0.02. End to end, maybe no. And similarly, I have put some numbers for teccom, AM guides, and PDF. Now let's represent these. On the left hand side, whatever you see, they are called features, right? So let's see in a different light. So if we represent, instead of a number, a set of numbers, it's called a vector in a maths term. So AM sites is represented as 11011, and similarly marketing, teccom, and so on. I did the maths, minus, plus, and equal to. If you see, this comes very close to what AM guides is, that vector is, right? So that is how the maths was done. So this seems very simplistic, that once things are in this form, oh, of course you will get it. You can do any kind of maths and so on. Now, how do you get that left hand side, which the features are? So for any particular word, what is the set of features, right? That is the critical part and the most complex part. That is not humanly possible to go and give features to all the words. Right? So that is where the neural network and computing come into the picture. So let's see how that works. And it should work on all languages. It should not become language specific. So I have given an example of three languages. It's English, Hindi, and Japanese. So how it works is, you give a problem to solve to the computer, and then it will learn the properties. It will learn the features automatically as the byproduct. Right. So the problem is at the bottom is mentioned is a fill in the blanks. So if you have two words given, what is the third word? So it's a fill in the blanks. We are asking computer to solve. How it will solve is, it will take a corpus of three words each, and then try to do all the computing and so on, and then try to guess, right? Here, I've highlighted those three words. Is omitted in doing all this computing because they are considered as a stop word. It's all over the place, so those are ignored, right? So AM guides powerful probably is the answer which will come. So to solve it, this is the neural network which we had earlier. You give all the words as a feature to the computer to solve. So AEM word, how it is given is, let's say you have a corpus of 200 words, you give all 200 in a vector, but you set AEM as 1, rest all are 0. Similarly, you give guides, so that is 1, rest all are 0. And it does all those computing and so on. It has a result is also a 200 word matrix. But it will have a different weight to different words. And so I'm not getting into the complexity of how the whole thing works. That is not the idea here. What the computer will do while doing solving this the problem is learn the features, right? So it will learn that for the word powerful, this is the vector. For word CMS, this is the vector. And what you see F1, F2, F3 is that is what the values are. Those are called weights in computer science world. Now, I put 3 neurons. It can have more neurons, so you will have a more number of features or properties, right? But it is not like endlessly you will benefit. So there is a pros and cons that what is the right number of the neurons you should have and how deep you should have, because it can get very, very computationally intensive, right? Expensive. So this is how the computer will learn while solving the problem, but you don't know what it has learned, right? AM guides I had put as the features as, let's say, end to end or experience. So those were the named features which was given. But here, computer has learned something. How does it learn? It based on the context which you gave and the problem you asked to solve, right? So that is the limitation how it learns, but it has learned something. And then it can do wonderful things. So it's called self-learning. It can do something like this: speaking and spoke, writing and wrote. It will not know that it is a verb and tense, but it will know that they are related, right? Similarly, India and New Delhi, France and Paris, it will learn that they are related in a similar way, but it will not know that they are country or capital. Similarly, it will go and learn for any language. Hindi and Japanese I mentioned, but it can go and learn for any language all these relationship properties, features, and so on, and it can do wonderful things, right? So in the teccom space, what all things it can do? So for example, smart tagging, auto summarization, content reuse, autocomplete, related content personalization. There's some of the stuff I have mentioned, but it can do much more, whatever we want it to solve. So it's a very interesting area emerging. It has been kind of there for the last 10 years. It started in 1980s and 90s, but for 20, 25 years, it was dormant, right? It was not taking off, but last 10 years, it has taken off like anything, and it's everywhere. You do machine translation, you do a whole lot of things. It's all these things are used, right? So it's pretty fascinating, and hopefully we'll see more solutions around this in our products, and which will help our users better. With that, I am done. So wish you a very great day 3. Enjoy. There are like very nice sessions lined up, and thank you.
Welcome to Day 3 of the 2022 Adobe DITAWorld Conference. I'm Rob Hanna, and I'm very pleased to be here as a diamond sponsor to this premier industry event. I am honored to share the stage at this event with some of the best talent in our industry, showcasing some of the best technology. And in the coming weeks, I'll have some exciting news to share with you that I think will be a game changer in the Adobe AEM Guides community. But in the meantime, while I may be new to the Adobe stage, I'm not new to Adobe products. Like most of you, I've built much of my success in the field with Adobe products such as FrameMaker and RoboHelp. In fact, I've been a technical communicator for more than 30 years. And over that time, I've explored my own curiosity into the nuts and bolts of technical writing. For nearly 20 years, I've been helping clients around the globe make the transition to structured writing with DITA XML. And during that time, frankly, I've been troubled by the slow rates of adoption and lack of ROI companies have seen when moving to DITA. And I was convinced that there had to be a better way. So in 2013, I launched my company, Precision Content in Toronto, Canada, to help organizations unlock the potential of DITA, starting with the content itself. So we started with a focus on changing our mindsets around content and how to author it. We created our own research-based precision content writing methods around which we built our teams of information architects, software developers, writers, and trainers, all centered on this methodology and an evolving set of best practices. And that's what brings me here to you all today, to talk about an important concept in structured authoring and delivery called microcontent. And so I want to take you through the problem that we intend to solve before diving into microcontent, talking about the four main characteristics of function, focus, structure, and context, and then talk about some of the application of microcontent for omnichannel delivery before wrapping up. On day one of this conference, Sarah O'Keefe gave a brilliant keynote on how content as a service promises to fundamentally change how we publish content to meet increasingly complex operational needs of the clients we serve. Today, I want to step back a bit and talk about the why and the how we will reach this bold new vision. Many of the large, well-established organizations we all serve are facing competition from much smaller, faster, exponential organizations that are completely disrupting their industry sectors. The expected lifespan of a Fortune 100 company today is considerably shorter today than it was only 2 decades ago. These upstarts have found ways to leverage vast amounts of external intelligence to drive information enablement. What if we instead looked inwards? If only these established brands could leverage the best competitive advantage that they have, their own experience and wealth of tacit knowledge, they could rise to disrupt their own industry before the competition does. If only they could tap into their own institutional knowledge. If they could find a way to information enable their own workforce to find new opportunities and explore new directions. So, of course, how will artificial intelligence contribute to this? AI is only now beginning to touch our industry in ways that were hard to even imagine a mere decade ago. We are seeing advances in machine learning for machine translation, natural language processing, and even natural language generation. Yes, machines are now writing stock reports, sports stories, children's books, and some very questionable Christmas carols. But if we want to see AI become a force in our industry, we'll need to meet it halfway. We need to learn how to write for both humans and machines. And this will unlock what we're trying to achieve through omnichannel and creating meaningful customer experiences. Now, there are many great articles published and presentations given on the importance of the customer experience through omnichannel delivery and support. The main thrust of these talks focus on the need to establish trust with our audiences through reliable, consistent, and pervasive messaging and communication across all user modalities. But what if, in addition to fostering exceptional customer experiences, we turned our efforts to giving our own workforce the best information available to delight our customers, whether it is in a customer-facing role or directed to building better products and services and exceptional employee experiences? So, to really fully appreciate the exceptional rate of change we're facing in the content and technology space, I want to take a step back to where it all began. About 100,000 years ago, we started talking, and voice communication became how we communicated with each other on a one-to-one basis. It wasn't for 60,000 years that we started actually writing things down, and thus the birth of the content industry. And through this 1.0 phase of content, we see that the technology has evolved, becoming much more durable, portable, reusable, affordable, and pervasive as we move through the centuries. Up until the early 1400s, with the invention of the Gutenberg press, which of course changed society in so many different and meaningful ways, where we democratized information and made information available to the masses. And then, of course, in more recent memory, the age of digital, the invention of the web, social media, mobile, where now anybody can publish and everybody does. And we're right on the precipice of the next major shift and the next major step in content and communication as a medium. This is voice. All right, this is where we talk to machines and machines talk to us. And machines can take what we tell them and they can package it up and they can maintain that information and share that information anywhere and any time. This is a major step. And when we think about science fiction and we think about the idea of neural interfaces into information, this really is much closer than we think. In fact, Elon Musk has already come out with technology in the form of Neuralink. And what does this mean for our society and how it will evolve our society, where we're able to communicate in a whole new level? So with that, how do we start to talk with machines? How do we create content that we can leverage, not just to keep the lights on with our day-to-day producing regular print, PDF, online help, web pages, and the like, but how can we leverage that content to serve additional channels, additional audiences, including machines? And this is microcontent. And while microcontent was first coined back in the 90s by Jacob Nelson, we've evolved it a little bit. So taking it out of or evolving it beyond the marketing sphere and web content to structured content or intelligent microcontent. Now, it's of course important to note that it's not microcontent just because it's small. In fact, we use 4 primary characteristics to help define microcontent. First, focus. Limiting microcontent to be about a single answer to a question, about one thing. Function. Classifying information to identify intended user response. Structure. Using predictable patterns in language. And context. To make microcontent easily related to other content. So let's break these down just a little bit. So focus. Microcontent must be about only one thing. As technical writers, we like to cram a lot of information into tiny spaces. We like to be very economical about how much paper we use to produce information, and to great effect. But what does it mean for the ease of human consumption, and particularly machine consumption, when we pack information so tightly? Looking at how we organize information and how we create architectures for information needs to be able to take this into account. So let's look at a typical topic. All right, so topics are not microcontent. Not exactly. So let's look at this and look at a task topic. So, one of the more complex semantic constructs in the DITA world. So, of course, we start with our primary block or short description describing the purpose of the task most typically. And then we have supporting blocks to help the reader actually perform that task. Now, when we look at this, each of these blocks within the body have a heading, have their own semantic substructures, their own way of conveying information. In fact, they have their own information types. All right, within this task topic, only one of those blocks is an actual task, and that's the steps block that tells the person how to actually perform the task. Everything else is a different type of information, all wrapped in a task topic. This is an important concept, all right? So I want to talk about really differentiating the task, or the topic, I should say, and the block. So let's do a little bit of a comparison. So topics are really a construct for authoring and for creating information, where blocks are more a construct for consuming that information. Right? Topics are really only meaningful to the author, and they represent a unit of work, whereas blocks are a medium for interchange, for sharing. Topics, all content is authored, reviewed, and approved as a topic, whereas all content exists inside blocks contained within topics. Blocks represent individual files that are versioned, uniquely identified, whereas blocks are virtual, as part of a topic or referenced by a topic. Topics consist of one or more blocks, and blocks exist in one or more topics. Topics can be reduced to a block, and blocks can be expanded to a topic. And finally, topics are suitable for traditional publishing channels, such as print and online as pages. But they don't work quite as well when we're talking about conversational user interfaces such as chatbots and automated assistants, right? Where blocks are much more appropriate. So that's focus. Now function. Information theory says that information is what information does. All information has some function based on how we work with that, how we interpret that information. Information is purely a human construct. And so we need to be able to identify the intended reader response for this information. We're going to shape this information such that it will meet the needs of the user based on what they want to do with it. So we need to have a means to effectively categorize this. And when we talk about DITA and we talk about information typing and concept, task, and reference, really we're looking at a model for reader intent, what we want the user to do with that information. So let's look at the information types that we use here at Precision Content to categorize information. Of course, we have reference, task, and concept. But we assign very specific meaning to each of these different types of information. So reference describes things the reader needs to know, whereas task instructs the reader how to do things. And concepts are used to explain things that the reader needs to comprehend. All right, so very, very specific cases for this. And we introduced two more information types. And these really come from information mapping, just like concept, task, and reference do. And these are process and principle. Where process is used to demonstrate things the reader needs to understand when they need to understand how things work. And principle is used to advise the reader about what they need to do or not do and when. Next, we want to look at structure. All right, we must use predictable patterns and language in order to make microcontent work. And Tony Self, in his book, the DITA Style Guide, took a really good run at defining structured authoring, and I think this is a very useful definition for us. But in fact, it's not the first time, obviously, structured authoring has been mentioned. In fact, it's been defined quite some time earlier. In fact, did you know that concepts in structured authoring predate DITA? Sure, that makes sense. They predate XML. Okay. They predate markup languages. Curious. In fact, they even predate desktop publishing. So structured authoring isn't about the tools. Structured authoring is not about XML or DITA. In fact, we go back as far as 1969, 30 years before DITA came on the scene, where Robert Horn first published his paper on information mapping, introducing concepts around structured writing, blocks and maps, and information typing. So the very first structured writing, if you will, was done on a typewriter. And you go out to Google Scholar and you look this up, 1969, Robert Horn, you can find his paper that he published for the U.S. military on information mapping. Structured writing on a typewriter. Who'd have thunk? So this is an important concept that I want to really get across here, is that structured authoring is more than just the XML. It's more than the tools. It's the writing. Right? We have to do both. The tools are very, very important to help guide authors in how to effectively structure content and do it in a consistent way so that we can work collaboratively as a team to create large amounts of structured information and be able to reuse that information across information sets. So I'm going to walk you through one of my favorite examples. And this, in fact, was our very, very first customer back in 2013. And it was the American Joint Committee on Cancer, the AJCC, which is part of the American College of Surgeons. They brought us in to help them transform their cancer staging manual. What they really trying to do was, they were looking to be able to self-publish, get out of Word, create a better workflow. But what they were really interested in was being able to share or reuse this information in other information systems, such as electronic health records and cancer staging calculators. And so they had attempted to, sort of ship this information overseas and have people wrap XML tags around it to see if we couldn't just make this work. And they were not successful, and they did not know why. So they came to me. So, in fact, they gave me this snippet of content. I had explained to them what our methodology was and how it worked, and offered to demonstrate. So they sent me this exact snippet of text, and I'm not a medical writer. I don't know the first thing about cancer or oncology or the like, but using methods to go in and analyze this information, we're able to see, what's really wrong with it. But at first blush, being a DITA smarty, I can look at this and say, this is a rather simple DITA structure, right? Probably a definition list. We've got a couple of footnotes in there, just some paragraph text, nothing too complicated. If I want to reproduce this structure exactly as is, it's a simple path to putting XML around that, but it's not structured. That's the problem. So we go in, we pull this apart, we identify ambiguous or redundant text. We find big holes in the information where there is information missing that is necessary for human comprehension. And this content had been out there for decades, just like this. And so anyway, we took this, we worked with their subject matter experts, and we filled in some of the holes. And this is what we came up with. New way to sort of structure the cancer staging table, where we saw with this exact same segment of content, almost we almost cut the number of words in half, and we added words here. We added information that was missing and still saw a significant reduction in the word count, while also improving the readability score on this. So making this information easier for humans to comprehend, making this information discrete and disentangling that information so that it can be more easily interpreted. So at the same time, we've made this information easier for machines as well. In fact, we created a specialization around this XML so that we could rework this information to have it display in that table, but also make it intelligible for machines, making content ready for both human and machine consumption. The last of the four principles or characteristics is context. And this is really important for us to understand, because while we talk about microcontent, we talk about chatbots, and a lot of this sort of microcontent that we're authoring is often written in isolation, as opposed to part of a greater whole. So what context does is context helps us to understand how this information relates to other information. How does it fit as a part of a whole? And of course, doing the writing that we do, we create lots of documents, lots of information products. And as we do, we accumulate a lot of metadata, relational metadata, administrative metadata, a lot of metadata as we create this content at the topic level, at the map level, at the publication level, in the CCMS, gathering information as this information is produced. And if only we can burst this information into blocks, burst it all, burst every single piece of information in this document and wrap that particular metadata around each of these blocks so that we can reconstruct this information and we can break it down and we can then relate it to other types of information and combine it in new and interesting ways. Then we have real microcontent, where when we take that content and then we include it with that metadata and we can wrap it up into a package that we can use to serve content as a service type needs or other means of actually getting this content out there. Remember, content as a service being more of a pull technology than a push technology, right? So when consumers want to consume that information, they can use SOAP calls and open APIs to actually target information in content as a service applications and headless CMSs and such, so that they can retrieve the information that they need, but they may need to be able to put it back into context with the larger whole. And that's what this is for. And an interesting emerging technology out of Germany, out of TCOM, is the IIRDS standard, or Intelligent Information Request and Delivery Standard. And it does just this. It's an archive format that contains a content payload that can be in any number of different forms. But the metadata is in a very prescriptive form. All right, so standardizing the metadata rather than standardizing the content, and creating these small chunks of information that then can serve the needs of things like the Internet of Things and Industry 4.0. Now, we're seeing microcontent show up in many places, including Adobe products. So, of course, in RoboHelp has its own microcontent features where you can create intent and response or question answer type pairs in RoboHelp. Very, very, very useful, very, very helpful. And of course, in AEM guides, we have the snippet feature, which allows us to create these reusable microcontent blocks for authoring. And I think we still have ways to go, and to really turn this into an effective practice. And I'm really excited to be getting started in here. Now, one of the tools that we've been using for some time is a tool called Witty Parrot, and we've developed a DITA bridge into Witty Parrot. And what you're seeing here is our actual writing guide has been burst into WITs or containers, blocks of microcontent. The content has been regularized to HTML, and all the metadata has been extracted and can be managed and be used for search and assembly and filtering of that content, where we can then serve it out to the enterprise using Microsoft plugins available for Word and Oxygen to make this this content repository accessible to anybody in the organization, not just structured author writers or those who are working with the CCMS, but to anybody in the organization. In fact, we can even take the same content and repurpose it in Teams as a chat bot. So, there's a lot of different technologies out there. It's just looking at how we use it and how we leverage it. So, are we ready for what's next? I'm going to suggest that we're really already on a path here as we've transitioned from book-based authoring to topic-based authoring. We're on a path. We just need to continue this journey. And it won't be easy, right? It will take time. It will take effort. It will take significant rewrite of a lot of content to get it ready. But we have a path. We have a way. So microcontent really is just the next step in the journey of our evolution. So visit our website. You can go out to pcast.info/DITAWorld, where you can subscribe to our newsletter. You can download some free web papers, including our microcontent white paper that we've just produced, which is a case study with a client we've been working with for just about 4 years now, where we've done some pretty remarkable things with our microcontent strategy there. And of course, you can visit us for more information on the web at precisioncontent.com. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And that's it for me today. Thank you.
Everybody. I hope that you are enjoying DITAWorld 2022, and I would like to thank you for joining me, Amanda Patterson, for my presentation called Funding a Regrettable Necessity: How to Get Executive Buy-in for Technical Communications. So, first of all, I'm all over social media. Please feel free to connect with me during the presentation, after the presentation. If you find tidbits and stuff that's useful to you, please by all means share them, tag me, mention me. I'd love to continue this conversation. So I am the Technical Communications Manager for Hunter Douglas. Hunter Douglas is a world-leading luxury window coverings brand, and as such, we operate in the consumer goods manufacturing sphere. And I am also the programs manager for the Rochester, New York chapter of the Society of Technical Communications. I have a PhD in comparative literature, and my specialization is science fiction. My dissertation was on the human experience of the future, and really looking at where consciousness can begin and end in biological beings and in machines. So I do spend some time wondering if I am a conscious robot or not, and but we can talk about that offline too. In a previous career, as I was going through grad school, I was a college writing instructor, and where all of my lit peeps were very much into teaching literature, I really fell in love with teaching writing specifically and really getting into the researched argument and finding the clearest, most precise ways to communicate information, which, as I'm sure everybody in the audience can figure out, very easily lent itself to actually going into a career in technical communications, where I am no longer teaching writing as much, although I do enjoy mentoring and bringing up my junior staff. But I'm actually doing the writing for myself. And my background is firmly in manufacturing. I love to kind of get my hands on things and build stuff. I write a lot of procedural information for just putting stuff together, taking it apart, very hands-on, very tactile, and haven't really gotten into the software, but do not let that stop you from continuing on with my presentation. Everything in here is really about how to pitch new ideas to executives and how to get them to invest in technical communications, regardless of whether you're in manufacturing or in the software industries. So this really gets me into, what's my story? Why am I here talking to all of you nice folks? And my journey to get AEM Guides funded really started 2 years ago when I joined Hunter Douglas. I joined a team and quickly took over a team that had a history of a little bit of mismanagement and a history of being in a fairly typical manufacturing setting where tech comm was acknowledged as a necessity, that you should not just send consumer goods out into the world with no documentation on how to use them or install them or clean them and care for them or anything like that, and acknowledge that our products are manufactured using very large, very powerful, very dangerous equipment, and our Hunter Douglas folks deserve to be protected and deserve good documentation to do as much as we can to prevent accidents and to make sure that we can produce extremely high quality product, as much of it as fast as we can. So I kind of came in with executive leadership really asking, do we really need tech comm? Do we really need this bespoke group of humans to generate all of this documentation? Is there another way that we can do it? Is there other groups that might be able to take this over? And within 18 months or so, I really changed that conversation to, what do you need from us? From the executives asking me what I need to make TechCom happen. In this interim, we took on a lot more work. We stopped a revolving door of contractors. We took on the work of 8 people and only added 2 heads. And a lot of this is owed to all the fabulous functionality that you find in AEM Guides. So how did I make this happen as somebody new to the team, new to the company, and to get such a 180 turnaround on executive conversation? My foundational approach I got out of a TED Talk I saw years ago by Linda Cleott Wyman. And her TED Talk is called How to Fix a Broken School, Lead Fearlessly, Love Hard. And she is a true inspiration to me, not only for the work that she has done in education, but really how she turned her school around. And one of her mottos or sayings is, so what? Now what? And this guided me because it's what people needed to know to change their perceptions and to understand what's going on in my happy little realm of tech comm. So my first step was to look at my team and look at our processes, really truly understand my current state. My second was to crystallize my vision for my ideal state. What would pie in the sky, what do I want things to be like? Third, I then identified what would it take to get me from current state to utopian perfect vision future state. And the fourth thing was then to sell this grand plan to the powers that be to get it funded and supported. And then lastly is to implement it. And in order for me to do this, and really in that last step of selling your plan to the powers that be, that's really where so what, now what really came into place, because it allowed me, once I identified my, all the aspects of my current state, it allowed me to really communicate why does it matter and what are the implications. That's so what. So what is this current state issue matter? What's its implication to my job, to the company, to the team that I work on? And now what? Now what do we do with that information or that implication? Do we need better tools? Do we need better technology? Do we need more people? Do we need a different approach? Do we need a new process? What are we going to do now? And that progression of identify an aspect of the current state, clearly state why it matters and its implications, and what are you going to do about it? That clear, crisp process and linear logic is what got me from why are you guys doing this to what can we do to help you in roughly 18 months. So let's dig into this a little bit. Wanted to start on the positives. I was a new manager coming into a team. I didn't want my team to think that I hated them out of the gate, because that was entirely untrue. And I wanted to really see, what are my strengths? What am I working with? And I think this is good, especially also for you managers that maybe have been managing your teams for a while. Have you forgotten what the teams are good at? Have you come to accept great skill sets as average because you're used to interacting with those folks every day? And so really take a good inventory. Where are you just crushing it? What are you doing well that you want to be able to replicate that throughout the rest of your workload? For me, I started with some really good authoring tools. I had Adobe InDesign. It was our number one authoring tool. We have a couple of others, but InDesign houses probably 80 to 85% of our content. And my team was just the most dedicated TechCom team I could ever ask for. Their willingness to work very hard, very often, is just impressive. And I came to this team by being a lone tech writer and, working with ad hoc groups of people coming together who had no real interest and investment in the TechCom projects that we were working on. So to come to this team that will do anything and everything to come together, produce high quality, high quantity documentation was just really a breath of fresh air for me. And once you identify these, you want to start documenting them, because you're going to want to know at the drop of a hat, off the top of your head, what your team's strengths are. And you're going to want to commit these to memory, know them inside and out. Once you have identified your strengths, so what? So what do they matter? What are their implications to your team? For mine, their willingness to work hard meant I was confident that we could execute content migrations, and that we could take on big challenges, and that they would be willing to put in the extra work to learn how to use this new technology. And so then the now what to your strength? What can you do with that? And again, mine was we can take on more work because they're willing to do it and they're able to. These are going to be really critical as you get into pitching your team and pitching your plan and your ask, because people really want to know, what are you good at? What are you a subject matter expert in? And in this, you also want to think a little outside the box. As communication specialists, we're not limited to text and we're not limited to SOPs. We might have skills for layout, for design, for interpersonal communication, for putting presentations together. We have skills for understanding complex engineering terms and being able to distill it down and distill processes down so that anybody can understand what's going on with them. So really think outside of the box too. On my team, I've got a couple of folks that can sit down and crank out data entry like nobody's boss, and that becomes a service I can provide to the company. I have got a person who is just the sweetest empath who can sit and will listen to you and will help you sort through whatever's going on in your life. And she just brings just such a warm, calming balance to the team. And I think, where else other than authoring documentation can she be effective for my team and for the organization? So don't feel trapped in just authoring and documentation and procedures, and take the blinders off and really look at what does your team bring to the table, bring to the organization. And then of course there's the flip side to that of where are your pain points, and where are your in Hunter Douglas, we prefer opportunities. Where are your opportunities for growth? Hunter Douglas also prides itself on an innovating entrepreneurial spirit. So we really look at where's the team grinding through work out of necessity rather than innovating a new and improved solution to do something better and faster and more efficient. So these may be things within your control, these may be things outside of your control, but as long as they have an impact to your team, you want to identify them. Of particular interest in this are, especially if you are looking to change how you author, you're going to look for tasks or processes that are time intensive and low value add. On my team, when I first joined, we had how we tracked our project time was in a very old software that took forever. It took forever to input 40. What I did for 40 hours probably took me 2 hours of my life to do that. That's just not a good use of anybody's time. So, and there is low value add to that because we don't bill outside of Hunter Douglas. It's all money internal within. And when I joined, even the shuffling money from one pocket to another was phasing out. So where are your pain points? And then ask again, so what? What is the impact? Well, for me, the impact is that's 2 hours that I don't spend either authoring documents or figuring out what's the next best tool technology for my team. It means that I'm not looking at professional development opportunities for them. It's 2 hours that I could be using someplace else. It's a higher value add. The other weird catch in this is that you're also going to want to fight against any perceived shortcomings or pain points on your team. And I find it very interesting that as, needed as TechCom is, a lot of teams suffer under this shadow or cloud of nobody in the organization knowing what they do and why they do it and how they do it. It's not very transparent to a lot of the organization. So you may have to really look at, well, this isn't a pain point, but people perceive us to be weak here. And what is that doing? Is the perception that you're not moving out of print fast enough, hindering your executives' desire to fund you. That could be a very real possibility. And so you want to look at what are those perceived shortcomings for your team. If you are unsure, you're going to want to, really go outside of your team and ask any of the groups that handshake with yours. So whatever your upstream processes and teams are and your downstream processes and teams, you're going to really want to look at meeting up with them. I have found a couple of things that my publishing group came to me and they're like, this is our process to publish this because we have to redo all of these links. Can you just not export, can you help us out? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll just not export the PDF as interactive and you can put the links in where you want. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So there's the perception that my team is creating a pain point and that we can't change things that we actually can change very quickly and easily. And document these also. This gets me into a lot of the, so what and how to explain this in terms that executives are going to understand. And at this point, you really want to rely on the data. Not in excess, and not in repetitive, and not in bad, but in good, clean, consolidated data. Know your stats. For this, I look at things like either hours spent on projects or processes. I look at the cost of producing a page or a piece of content. You might want to look at the hours and cost of authoring versus working on any administrative and ancillary tasks. And again, also think about, what's your data storage space and how much is that costing the company? You might be able to get some wins in there too. But you want to be able to show, again, your current state of where these numbers are and, and use that to look for opportunities for you to grow and to improve on what you're doing. This is also really going to help the executives understand where the problem is, where's the time going, where's the money for funding going, and what can we do to make all of this cheaper and more efficient. So once you have your data and you know what your current state is, the next thing you're going to do is start looking at the future. What is your idea utopian TechCom future state? Do you want to be able to take on more projects? Do you want to take on better projects? Do you just want to be able to do the projects you have faster and in a less painful manner? But really come up with a crystallized vision for your plan and the future of your team. And invite your team, to talk about this. All these things I have done with the team to make sure they're a part of it. But as the manager, I do think a lot of this is a big part of my job, and I want the team's opinion so that I can create a vision that they want to be a part of, not just what is needed based on statistics. So once you have your vision of your utopian state crystallized and documented, then you have to start looking at, well, how do I get there from where I am now? What is it that you need to reach that state? You're going to want to look at what your options are to get there. For me, again, my big thing was digitalization, decrease my data footprint, increase my speed to market of my documentation, increase my content reuse, and really stop doing things manually. So my pitch was easy. I wanted AEM guides. Hunter Douglas had AEM to begin with. That was our document storage system. That's where a lot of my publication came out of. It was sort of a no-brainer for me. And you really can't compete with all the functionality that AEM guides gets you. You know, so do you need that? And then think about, okay, so if they said yes tomorrow and I got AM guides, what would I need to actually implement it? You might need some contract labor while you migrate content. You may need, and I highly recommend, an implementation partner. I would have pushed much harder for an implementation partner much earlier on. I'm now working on that process now. But you also want to look at, especially within your organization, what teams are you going to need the support of? So you should be thinking about IT. You should be thinking about maybe project management if you need to involve them to implement this project. You may be thinking about customer experience or marketing if you have another group that publishes all of your documentation, and think about where you get your content from. Are there people, subject matter experts, that need to review your content? And really make sure that whatever your solution is, that you have an account for all of those people too, because when you pitch your solution and you pitch your idea, executives are going to want to know what is it that you need, and you want to demonstrate that you have really thought about all of the possibilities that this is going to touch. It is very rare to implement something as large as AEM guides and it be entirely insular to just one team and not need the assistance of somebody else outside the organization. The other essential part to looking at the future and to defining your path, to defining what your future is and defining your path there, is to connect that vision to your organization's strategic initiatives. And I can't say that loudly or strongly enough. Connect your vision to your organization's strategic initiatives, because that way it demonstrates that you don't only know about what's going on in your happy little TechCom bubble, but that you are aware that your TechCom bubble affects the rest of the organization. And you are never going to get buy-in for any kind of project or software or headcount if you are actively driving against and opposite of what the organization is trying to do. So for me, this looked like really pitching digitalization and ending print. Yes, we have just done that. It looked like applying lean manufacturing principles to TechCom. I could do some things internally without needing other groups in my organization, like streamlining that time calculation process. I made that change and had some quick wins there that gave me street cred with leadership to show I am interested in making changes, and I will take any little change that I can get, but that I need some bigger help here. And I looked at other smaller things that we can do to increase speed to market of the documentation, because again, that built this credibility that I'm invested in changing how we fundamentally do technical communications to make it modern, to make it relevant to today, and to align it with what is going on in the organization. Again, in manufacturing, I am closely connected with our project management group and our product development groups. So I have to be able to apply some of these manufacturing and project management concepts to what I'm doing in TechCom. And that gets me to, once you have your current state crystallized, you have identified all of the key aspects of your current state, you have identified why they matter, so what, and you have identified what you want to do about them. Now what? You are at this point, you should be pitching in hallways, you should be having an elevator speech, and you should really be looking at making formal presentations and pitches to your leadership. And when you do this, realize that pitching to leadership is using the same set of skills that you have as a technical communicator. I saw the image on the right is the rhetorical triangle, which I got out of a writing textbook years ago. But actually seeing how content interacts and with all of the players and how complex creating content is, to really see that, I think makes it easier to then develop presentations that will be effective, because I know that I'm considering all of the things that affect the communication of that content. The biggest and most critical part of the rhetorical triangle for specifically a pitch like this to get support is to know your audience. Know not just the names of the people in the room, but know how they like communication, know what's important to them, know what strategic initiatives they're championing, and be able to tailor your current state, your future state, and your plan to get there to the people that are sitting in that room. If, like me, you are new to the organization or new to pitching to these folks and you don't know what their interests are, go out and ask your immediate leadership, ask your counterparts in different groups. There's probably somebody that you can talk to that has pitched to this leadership or parts of this leadership previously. You want to find out about what trigger words do they have that will shut them down so you can avoid them. And you also want to figure out what organizational buzzwords they really like, so you can make sure that you're talking about TechCom in those terms. Of all the types of people that may or may not be in your audience, it is almost guaranteed that they are not TechCom specific. There are very few organizations that have a technical communication reporting structure up to the C-level that would have the authority to sign significant contracts such as AEM guides and implementation. So you, again, don't want to pitch this in TechCom terms. You want to pitch this in terms for your audience. Think about what project managers work with every day. Think about what MBAs work with every day and what tools they use and how they need content presented. Flow charts for processes, huge. Diagrams to show your ideas connected to strategic initiatives, to show flow of your plan, huge. Bring in your statistics that you've collected and your data that you have. And my other big thing that I have found very effective is if you are going to be changing anything about the visual presentation of your documentation, have a before and after, so that these folks don't have to think long and hard about what it is that you're trying to communicate, that they can just see what the new document would look like. Before you walk into that pitch, you may also have to do some education. Do not undervalue this step. And this one's kind of here a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have a good place in the whole flow of how to approach this, because you will probably be doing it at every step. But if you're talking like myself, I'm in lower management, needing to report and pitch this to a divisional president, I had to do a lot of education along the way so that I could gain supporters whom my divisional president might actually listen to. And not that he does not value my opinion, but I am, again, very new to the organization. He would be looking to people that he has worked with before to get their opinions, to ask them questions. So it was critical for me to educate my boss, who's been with the company for 27 years, on what exactly am I trying to do with TechCom? What are all the words? What's the difference between structured and unstructured authoring, and why we're doing unstructured now, and why structured authoring is the way to go? And then with that, he was able to kind of prep and prime the pump with our vice president. So when I pitched this to her, she had a little bit of an understanding and the confidence to ask me detailed questions. And then she could, again, prime the pump with the president. And again, we could have a conversation about detail, why and how of things, and not get lost in jargon and confusion. So take the time to do the education as much as you can, because this is also a good place for you to demonstrate your credibility and your team's skill set. Okay, my pitch looked like this. And while this, I think folks can understand now, is clearly not my normal style to pitch stuff. I like things a little lighter and a little more fun, and a little more exciting, and lots of colors. But my leadership had told me that this was a template being used across the organization to make strategic pitches up to divisional leadership. And I said, well, okay, they've seen it and it's worked and people have gotten funding and support. And they said yes. And I was like, I'm in then. It was only this one slide for about an hour's conversation. And my leadership had told me that they had read the slide before I presented. And so that meant that I could just focus on the highlights of how getting AM guides would move my team from our current phase of grinding through documentation to the goal of working smarter before we have to work harder. And, you know, how that would open bandwidth and content reuse and all of that good stuff. So again, I relied on the people that I work with to give me guidance on how to present this information. You should do the same in your organizations, because if your audience kind of has a feel for the format, that's one less thing that they are going to be tripping over as you're pitching your ask. And my last piece of advice is to be confident. Be smiles, be energetic, have an extra cup of coffee that day if that's what it takes. But get yourself pepped up, pitch enthusiastically, pitch confidently. You have done the research. You have identified the key aspects of your current state and your future state and how to get there and why all of those aspects matter and are relevant. So what? Now what? You should know all of this content at least enough to be able to speak intelligently about it, if not off the top of your head. I spent a lot of time kind of working through little pitches in my head. That might be a little weird for folks. But if you are excited about the move forward into the future, the people you're presenting to are also going to be excited about that same move, and you'll get them on board. They'll be engaged, they'll be asking good questions, and you'll have the answers to those questions. And I think that's really what makes the pitch successful. And it is a pitch. You know, I know a lot of us don't really like the idea that we're selling something, but we are selling TechCom, and we have to sell TechCom. We have to make it desirable for leadership. We have to make it a little sexy and engaging and fun and interactive. And you can't do that if you are going to fall asleep or you are just a total bundle of nerves and kind of mumbling about it. So be engaged, be exciting. Wave your TechCom nerd flag high and proud. I'll be right there standing with you. And so that gets me to my now what. I've told you my story. Now what? Now what is it worked. My leadership signed off on purchasing and implementing AEM guides. It took me about 12-ish months to get to this point. And we signed a 3-year contract with Adobe. We're now closer to 18 months. We've got some folder structures in there. We've migrated some content. We're trying to figure out how to make it, do everything that we know it can do. and it's a phenomenally powerful tool. Again, I would highly recommend getting an implementation partner to really help get that initial groundwork laid so that you can use all of the functionality of AEM guides. It is a phenomenally powerful tool, and I am very excited for the progress that we have made thus far. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed DITAWorld 2022. If you have any further questions or want to continue this conversation, I am unbelievably happy to do so. Please look me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, or just send me an email. It's the best way to get a hold of me. Thank you. Have a lovely day.
And welcome to our session, the single source of truth for dual channel publishing, how Thomson Reuters publishes our content to AEM site pages and Salesforce knowledge. So what we're covering today, we'll go through some quick introductions of who Thomson Reuters is and myself, Amy Griffin. And then, of course, we'll nerd out together on our enterprise content strategy framework, how we're single sourcing our content and why that's so important. And then also the foundational work we're doing to synchronize our article templates and metadata schema between our AEM and Salesforce systems. Why we chose AEM guides. It's going to take me a little while to get used to saying that. So why we chose AEM guides. And then Sweeney's going to demo the setup of our Salesforce instance in AEM and the publish of our content to our Help Center built as an AEM site and Salesforce knowledge. And then lastly, what problems did we solve by implementing this solution? So let's go ahead and begin with a little video that helps you understand what makes Thomson Reuters Thomson Reuters.
The future is a work in progress, but progress itself can sometimes seem distant. And while we've made incredible leaps forward, the path ahead is not always clear. Now, more than ever, we must stand for the timeless ideals on which progress is built, to increase knowledge, to act with courage and integrity, to pursue justice, truth, and transparency, to inform the way forward. This is our purpose at Thomson Reuters. But the way forward isn't ours alone to decide. It's discovered together with our customers through conversations, decisions, and action. When we power professionals with the insight and information to act with confidence, together we uphold the rule of law, turn the wheels of commerce, catch bad actors, distinguish fact from falsehood, and inform people all over the world. Through our customers, we lay the foundations upon which value is created, advancing the integrity and resilience of critical institutions and systems. So together, we can inform the way forward to a more understanding, trusting world for all.
And as for me, and I don't have the very nice music in the background for my slide, but as for me, I lead the charge of an enterprise-wide content team made up of content strategists and content designers and conversation designers. Our team is focused on driving digital experiences and delivering self-service resources to our customers and internal agents. And I'm really proud of being part of the team who launched TR's first chatbot, Triva, which stands for Thomson Reuters Intelligent Virtual Agent. And as you can probably tell, in my spare time, I do love being busy. So I'm in my last year of gaining my master's degree in UX design from Kent State University. Go Flashes, if anybody's from Kent State. And I'm also a photographer. My family's pictured here, and I did take those pictures. And I do promise that my boys do smile. They just, in that day, wanted to look tough and serious for the photo. And now let's move on to the good stuff. So let's talk about an enterprise framework. With as large as we are at Thomson Reuters, and I'm sure you can imagine, and maybe you're even experiencing this where you're at, we have so many tools and resources that we've developed in a silo from one another that we then in turn deliver these segregated tools and resources to our customers and internal agents. So we took a step back and ran with an initiative called the Change Program. This is where we strive to consolidate our tech stack and unify our digital experiences across all of TR. And you can see on this slide some of the problems we're trying to solve. And I will be very honest with all of you. Our content team audited, and this is very embarrassing, but I'm going to say it. Our content team audited more than 25 different help centers across TR. Now, granted, we have an enormous product line. So, and each of those have their own help. But, we've got a number of different experiences across those products. That means we have even more different content management systems running in the back end. We have redundance in content everywhere, inaccurate answers even, and maintenance nightmares. And we learned just how much content can be shared across our products. So those redundancies alone would lower our work across multiple teams. And from an end user perspective, this can make it tough to do business with us, even as an internal stakeholder. There's many different work streams under the Change Program, and the one I'll focus on today is called the Help and Support work stream. And our content team is working to deliver that unified help and support center for our customers and internal agents. So that's one single experience. It's not a help center for internal agents and another help center for external customers, but a single help center that provides answers to both of the audiences. To solve the problems mentioned earlier, our first task was to synchronize article templates between platforms, the platforms being AEM and Salesforce. In AEM Guides, we use the out-of-the-box templates, concept, glossary, reference, and task. And then as we looked at Salesforce, we made sure to use a pretty generic article template, nothing customized, that accepts just the title, body of content, the metadata, and draft and publish status. And our next task was to align our metadata schema not only between our platforms, but across all our digital resources. So we're working hard at providing that unified experience within our folder structure, our URL structure, our metadata fields and values between our website, the help center, internal tools within TR, and of course, other resources, as I'm sure we've got many of them. We want end users to see the same facets in the filters after performing searches or even when navigating through a browse experience, because this will lessen their cognitive load as they move throughout our ecosystem. Everything will be very, very smooth for them. And so when we look across our enterprise, some of the keys to success in rolling this out is to single source content, synchronize templates between platforms, the article templates, and then align our metadata across digital experiences, but especially across AEM and Salesforce. All of this helps us create and maintain content in one location and then distribute it where our end users need it. And when I say end users, I'm referring to both our external customers and internal agents. They're both equally important to us. And if we have, for example, a customer service agent living in Salesforce, or a support representative living in the help center, or even an external customer living in the product, all of them will have access to the same single-sourced content. And let me give you a peek at some of those experiences. So in this first scenario, let's say we have a customer service agent answering questions about our customers' accounts. And we conducted research, just to let you know. We wanted to learn where our internal agents live and their jobs to be done. So we learned in our research that a customer service rep will typically live within Salesforce. During this research, we learned the content and answers inside Salesforce knowledge wasn't always up to date. And I'm sure some of you have faced, similar situations where our internal stakeholders don't always have the time to maintain this type of content. And then when that happens, it can easily grow stale. To resolve this problem, we migrated content from our Salesforce instance to AEM. And that's where we have content specialists of all types updating and maintaining and even growing the content and answers with respect to the contact volume coming into the contact center. So when an internal agent lives in Salesforce, they can perform a search, they can browse, they can even use Salesforce's Einstein feature that will crawl and return results that we've pushed from AEM. Our next scenario in delivering content to our end users is the support agent journey. A support agent, again, based on research, may be answering questions about how to do tasks within our products. And so the research we conducted informed us that they will typically live within our products and even the help center. Since we want to deliver content to where they live, we're again single sourcing the content in AEM and then publishing to our help and support center, which is an AEM site. I know I also mentioned our support agents can live within the products, but I'll show you more of that journey and that experience in the next scenario. So now let's just assume at this point that our support agent lives within the help center. And let me take you out to our new help center. There's a screenshot here. And then we also, this is what's live as of last December. It's very MVP at this time. We'll be adding many more features based on customer research that we've been conducting in Q1, and we'll release those new features here at the end of Q2. But remember the story of those 25 different help centers. This is that enterprise level tech stack. And then also this is the external UI that our internal agents and external customers will be using. So our URL is one that matches that of our website domain. Our folder structure within AEM Guides also mirrors the unified structure. And when we go to perform a search or just browse, you'll see the facets we've enabled externally. Product and subject and format, those will grow as well. And these are the ones that we're aligning across TR. And then also we have our global header, our breadcrumbs, and our footer also mirroring across our digital experiences. So we've really got a design library and creating something once, just like we're creating content once, and then using it across our digital experiences. And I'll take you into an article here so you can see the article format. And this is coming from AEM Guides. All right, our last scenario is that of our customer's journey. A customer will typically live within our products and the applications they use on a day-to-day basis. So we needed to deliver the same content within our products. Here's a screenshot of the experience, but let me also take you into one of our products and really show you how it works. And again, I'm really driving home that we're writing our content once in AEM and then distributing that content to our digital resources in many different areas and platforms. So let me bring this browser window over again and show you Westlaw Edge. It's one of our products. And here you can see the help and support icon. And if I click on that, you're going to see the in-app help widget that mirrors and is essentially just a widget of our help and support center on the web. You'll see here that we've got articles for you that we're promoting and highlighting. You can contact us, explore training. The Get More Help is going to take you right out to the Help and Support Center. And if I perform a search, you can also see in the filters that these filters are going to be the same, again, using the same metadata. And then I'll also take you out to this article, and it's going to open up our Help and Support Center. And all of that content is the same, whether you're in Salesforce, the Help and Support Center itself, and the in-app widget. And of course, we're going to continue expanding other resources and platforms that we deliver to. So one of these things, right before we get into a Sweeney's demo, why did we choose this XML editor as, or why did we choose AEM Guides, Adobe's XML editor, or a piece of that, is really scalability at an enterprise level. So Thomson Reuters has more than 25,000 employees. We are, as we audited everything and found so many different help centers across TR, we really needed something that was going to scale at that enterprise level. And it was also the same tool, not the same tool, but the same ecosystem that our web marketing team is using. Again, consolidating where we can and where it makes sense to use that same tech stack. The reuse of content, writing it once reduces maintenance costs and provide a consistent message wherever the content's delivered. And most importantly, writing it once and delivering the content to our end users when and where they need it. That's the biggest key to driving our digital resources and even increasing our self-service opportunities. And now I'm going to hand it over to a Sweeney, where she's going to demo the publishing process for you.
Thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you all are doing well. I'm Ashwini Lakshminarayanan from Adobe Techcom. I shall now talk a little bit about the article-based publishing, followed by a short demo. As part of AEM Guides product, we have article-based publishing engine integrated inside the web editor that allows our users to publish one or more topics simultaneously. This engine lets the users to make incremental changes to the article and publish them as and when they are ready. So they can selectively choose as many topics as possible to publish and at the same time build the entire map in an additive fashion. For example, if there are use cases where the users have updated content only for a few topics in the data map, they don't always have to publish the entire map. They can select and publish only the updated topics from the web editor. This way of publishing is more agile, enabling a speedy time to market, and also with this enablement, we directly output the data content to AEM sites and knowledge platform like Salesforce without the DITAOT plugin. This article-based publishing comes with the out-of-the-box template for knowledge management. So you can create a knowledge-based repository as a single source of content and publish them to AEM sites where the content team can host their technical content on top of their design to their websites and to the Salesforce knowledge. This knowledge-based template is built on AEM site using AEM's core components. So if you want to use your in-house knowledge-based AEM template, or if you want to reuse or customize the out-of-box template, then it's very much feasible. This is another reason why our customers would like to use this article-based publishing. If a topic is used in multiple maps, then with a click of a button, all the maps with that topic gets published. Also, while publishing, we can filter these topics by its document state and content modification date. By document state, it's whether the document is new or in review or review completed state. So we can filter them and use it for publishing. AEM Guides also provides bulk publishing mechanism which allows users to publish a single content to multiple geographies based on their languages or to multiple channels in one go. This slide shows how the articles are available in Salesforce after we publish them from AEM Guides. When we select a topic to publish, we can classify it based on their product line and publish it to the Salesforce for easy categorization of articles. You can also publish an article to Salesforce in its draft state so they can be published directly from within Salesforce later. Each time an update is made to the article and published from AEM Guides, a version gets created in Salesforce against the same article. So when several versions of an article exist, you can restore it to an older version and republish it. These are some of the key features of article-based publishing engine. So now let's go ahead and look for a demonstration on how this works end to end. So this is the web editor of AEM Guides. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm opening a sample map, Personal Spaceship Operations Manual. So once you've opened a map in the map editor, you can navigate to Outputs tab to create a preset of your target output. We have two presets configured already for this demo. One is Salesforce and one for AEM sites. So let's start with AEM sites. You can create an output preset with or without conditions, and also you can use a DITAWorld file. You can also use the AEM Guides baseline feature for publishing a specific version of your data map. In the AEMs tab, we need to enter all the AEM site related details. So this displays all the list of AEM site templates that are available on your AEM repository. I'm choosing the template which is available out of the box for us. So let me show you how the out of the box template looks like. As I said earlier, all the components that are used here, logo, title, text, the search bar, language navigation, all of these are based on AEM core components which you can reuse or customize as applicable. To enable this in your publishing engine, you can download this knowledge base template package from Adobe's software distribution portal. Moving back to our XML editor. So once we have chosen the site template, we have to choose the category, section template, and article template. So these are the structural components that's available for us to organize the look and feel of your output. These are basically predefined in the AEM site template creation. Next, in the articles tab, here we get to choose the topics and hit the generate preset button here to generate the output. So the output is generated and the topics which are published here will be available in AEM sites. This is how our content gets published. As I said earlier, this engine works at topic by topic level. So now I say that I have another topic that has to be updated. I can choose it here and publish again without having the need to publish the entire map. Say I'm making a change to this contact information and trying to republish it again along with a new topic, frequently asked questions, and I'm generating the preset. So this is how we can incrementally generate the output of one or more topics or publish the content to a knowledge-based platform in an article by article fashion. Next, let's see how the content is published to Salesforce. In order to use the Salesforce preset, a publish profile must be created, which allows us to establish a connection between AEM Guides and Salesforce to publish the knowledge base content. Firstly, to create a Salesforce publish profile, an app needs to be created and configured at Salesforce end. Once this is done, the app generates a consumer key and consumer secret. We need to navigate to editor settings and choose Salesforce as a knowledge platform under the server type. Enter the profile name and the site URL. The site URL is the consumer site that we would use for publishing the content. And then add the consumer key and consumer secret details that are generated while creating the connected app in Salesforce. Once these details are added, we need to log in to authenticate and finally save the settings. So Salesforce preset works similar to AEM sites publishing, where we can choose to apply the conditions with the data file and also baseline. In Salesforce tab, we need to select the publish profile. So the publish profile that has been configured already in the editor settings that gets populated here. So once we select the publish profile, all the details like the record type, content field, categories pertaining to this publish profile gets populated from Salesforce. In the article section, we can choose the required topics to get published to Salesforce, and then you can also make use of the filters to filter the documents based on its document state and last modified date. So in case if I want to publish these articles directly to Salesforce, then I may have to uncheck this option so that it doesn't go to Salesforce in draft state, but rather in a published state. So we are publishing the output. So we've got the confirmation that these files are published successfully. Let's check in the article section. So the personal spaceship operations manual and the legal document is published. So once the article is published to Salesforce, the chosen record type is FAQ and the article number gets auto-generated and the publication status set to published for this particular topic. So this is how the content gets published using AEM Guides article-based publishing engine.
Before we get into Q&A, let's go over what problems we solved with this approach. And I want to note that we're still validating actual numbers because this implementation is fairly new to us. We'll really see the results during our contact center's busiest season. So how do we help our end users? If you take a poll, and there's even research done in this area by reputable sites, but if you take a poll and ask your end users what's most important to them when it comes to help content, they'll tell you that they want accurate answers and fast. So we're able to do that now with this approach. And we've increased self-service opportunities because we're delivering content where our end users need it. And if you think about how this can help with the onboarding process, it helps it so we don't have to teach everything to our new employees, but rather teach them how to use their resources to get the answers they need and what our customers need. How do we help the business? We consolidated our tech stack. We're still doing that. Remember the 25 different help centers and the content management systems and even other systems behind the curtain. We're still consolidating as we migrate to our new help and support center, but we're on the right path to our shared tech stack across TR. Reduction in maintenance costs by sharing and reusing content across our products. During that research, we really learned that there was so much that could be shared that across our products that was rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. And we're expecting to possibly see a reduction in average handle time for our internal agents. And I say possibly because it's also possible that we've documented the most common questions, and now the call drivers or contact drivers will be of a higher level that may take longer to resolve. We'll just have to see how this looks after a busy season. The next steps for our help and support work stream of the change program in this journey is to do a lot of content cleanup. I also say you can't move, a junk drawer from one platform to another and expect the experience to be improved just because of the platform. Content plays a major role in improving the experience, so we have a lot of cleanup to do. And we're also looking at furthering the delivery of content to end users by understanding where they are in the products that they're using and providing that contextual content to them screen by screen. And this type of content, we'll expand on it. It'll include help and support content, training content, community posts, and more. And we greatly appreciate the time you've spent with us. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always looking to connect with others in the content world as we learn so much from one another. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure being here today and talking about one of my personal favorite topics, which is evolution. Evolution is what has defined many industries in the last few years. We've seen tremendous things happening in terms of the content evolving over time, in terms of steps having been taken in order to improve upon what already was a very, very good and solid baseline. Nonetheless, let me start by saying a couple of words about myself so that we can also have a solid background. I've been in this industry for closing in on 15 years. And within these 15 years, what I've been witnessing all along and constantly is the fact that there is a push towards more content being created, massively more over time, and a need, a necessity to handle this content from all possible angles in a much more efficient and streamlined way. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about those specific aspects. We're going to talk about global communication and how we can define a balance therein. DITA specifically, and how it has evolved and practically has defined with its evolution the evolution of other industries, of other content types. And then we're going to go into the details around how this whole thing ties in together with what has happened in the localization industry and specifically with XCM as a translation management system. Not only to the degree of automation, of improvement of processes, but also to the degree of that allowing the individual users, the individual people working within localization to enhance their ability to deliver content better. I'd like to start by saying a couple of things around the industry itself, if you're not familiar with it especially. So there's two very specific sayings within our industry that make a reappearance every now and then and are becoming buzzwords. The first is streamlining. And while streamlining is a very, very specific word that everybody is familiar with, within the localization industry, it carries a bit of a different meaning. Streamlining for us doesn't necessarily mean streamlining the localization processes alone, but by extension, it means that we need to streamline based on how the content source has streamlined. In effect, we adopt content creation, content management defines the process, defines how we should streamline. And then we in the localization, being the recipients of that content, adapt to whatever is happening on the content side. So if the content is evolving in a positive direction, a structured direction, so must we in localization move in that same direction. The second saying is one of the oldest sayings within this industry and has been around before I even started myself, which is garbage in and garbage out. In effect, what this means is that we are the recipients of content, and whatever that content is what we can also produce. So the quality of the content that is received for localization is the quality of the content we can also output. If that content is garbage, the best we can deliver is garbage. Translatable quality will never, ever be superior to the original quality. At best, it can match it. So garbage in, garbage out is something that will be heard quite a bit today, among other things that I will be talking about. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody in any possible way that there is a massive amount of data, of information being produced in the world. We have an insurmountable and unprecedented amount of different sources of content, user-created, company-created, structured, unstructured, out there in the world that is being produced on a daily basis. Even every second, there's millions of data points being created. All this has to, a degree at least, move into a localization stream. And as we can understand, it is becoming all the more complex to adopt and maintain proper processes and deliver those quality high results we're looking for, because all these sources are not necessarily quality high. In this chaos, amidst this chaos, there is a bit of a glimmer of hope, though, something that we've seen happening and that we've seen being more and more adopted, which is structured content. Structured content, and specifically DITA, of course, in this case, apart from being a tremendous achievement in terms of the content curating and the content creation and the content management, also has that ripple effect to localization. We go from a mode of hundreds of individual files from random sources with random content, with random quality being dumped for localization, with questionable results stemming on the other side, to a mode where we produce and effectively receive structured, curated content that goes away from that jumbled messaging that you have to process on a daily basis. Now, this evolution that we've seen over the last 10, 15, maybe even more years has been side by side. Content and content management has been the pioneer. It has defined the evolution because of the necessity to do so in order to be able to handle the masses of data that I mentioned before, the masses of information. But at the same time, because localization is a true necessity, it is a requirement for the vast majority of content being created, especially for companies that attempt to go global, it is an inevitable reality that localization itself has to evolve side by side to technical writing, to technical authoring. If the one becomes agile, the other has to become agile. If the one becomes structured, the other has to become structured. If not, then the whole thing breaks apart. By extension, the process is followed, right? So content is created, content is localized. If content is created in a good way, in a proper way, in an agile way, if you may, and then the localization doesn't follow the same principle, it creates a bottleneck. It creates a problem. It is a threat to whatever has been achieved on the content side. As such, the evolution had to be done side by side. The evolution had to be something that is, I would say, mutually followed, so that the results can be of equal level to both the source and the target. By controlling your source, you preserve your brand values. It is a very specific statement, and of course, it holds true if you look purely at the content side, that by controlling your assets, you preserve your brand values in that original language. However, and with everything that I've said so far, this holds true also to the world of translation, to the world of localization. Controlling those assets, structuring them, transfers the meaning to also the localized content. So the brand will not only be preserved in the source and be, I would say, unified and harmonized, but that will also be true for any localized variant produced out of the translation process. Now, of course, we know DITA and its strengths, and by going in the direction of structuring this content and adopting a structured content principle and methodology, intra-company communication has been maintained. It's unified. So what would be previously, and that is actually very, very true, a decentralized approach from various departments within a company to tackling their need, their necessity to translate content, and each of them approaching in a bit of a different way, we now moved into the mode whereby centralizing it under the same roof with structured means that the unified message is maintained and is empowered across all the different content streams produced by an organization. And while this might not be necessarily something that resonates with everyone right away, I can tell you here that by experience, one of the biggest hurdles companies see as they are evolving in a global world is the fact that they take different routes, different approaches for each of their content streams, for each of their departments, potentially each of their business units, because there are differences in how they are structured, how they're organized. By result, a few years later, down the road, there comes a realization that that has been a mistake. The mistake comes from the fact that each of them approaching it differently, from content creation to content localization, also gets different results. There is disharmony in the content. There is ambiguity in the content, both in the source and in the target variants being produced. And that, of course, is problematic by definition and does require a cleanup act in order to be improved and maintained. While I would, and many can argue actually for that matter, that content writers, content creators are not part of the localization process. They are not truly involved in localization itself. They are, however, one of the most vital links in that chain of events. As I mentioned before, and I'm going to use the same verbiage now, garbage in, garbage out. Simply here, if from the documentation side, the content is already of poor and low quality, inevitably you will have the same in the translated variants. This means that not only is it important that the source is being maintained, as we mentioned before, but it also effectively means that it becomes a vital part of the process. Hence, I mentioned also the streamlining notion earlier, which within our industry means that we streamline based on how the source has streamlined. They are key contributors. If you are working in technical communication, in technical authoring, and documentation architecture, you are a vital part of localization throughout the process, because the source is always what defines the results of this endeavor. We have come a long way, right? As I mentioned before, the evolution has been continuous. And DITA is one of these formats that has allowed for this evolution to bring also innovation. Now, many years ago, and if you look back in the past, you would have certain situations, certain conditions being met where you would get a huge dump of unrelated files to translate, or even worse, related files that, however, had no distinct, visible, tangible relation between them. Random file namings, random file extensions, random file formats, all convoluted and being dumped onto a translator, a linguist, to attempt to produce the best possible quality. With the structure that DITA has introduced to the source, what by extension happens and occurs is that the content that is submitted to XTM Cloud is properly mapped, identified, and exposed to the linguist in such a way that they can understand exactly what they're translating. And while this might again not be something that you're necessarily familiar with, you always have to remember that translators, linguists, do need context. They need to understand what they're actually working on in order to better to produce the best possible results. So the first thing here is that upon submitting the content, the DITA content to XTM, regardless of how many files we're looking at, small or large, you can leverage one of the core functionalities and technologies here, which is that we effectively join those files in a way that we produce a sensible, tangible, and accessible result to the translator. And that makes a huge difference to their productivity, their efficiency, and their potential quality output. As said, you have hundreds, maybe even thousands smaller fragments of a DITA file or smaller DITA files coming together to produce your DITA map. The linguist, however, will not be exposed to that complexity. That is a complexity which is needed in order to, of course, maintain the content in the source and make the most out of it, reuse content blocks continually, and be able to update items on the fly. When it, however, goes to the translator, that person will be overwhelmed by the masses of information. They are not trained and they are not experts in handling massive content, especially when we're talking about hundreds and thousands of different files coming their way. For them, that is a bottleneck. For them, that is a problematic area when translating. Simplicity is key, and that respects their need to be focusing on what matters, which is to translate content and produce quality high output. By this file joining that we mentioned before, by this effectively single DITA file for translation, as we would like to call it, the linguist is catered to. The translator now has the means, or rather has been removed from an unnecessary workflow or steps that they needed to perform before. Nonetheless, you can still hire multiple linguists. We can split the files subsequently to the process of dumping them to XTM cloud in this case. So there's many things that you can still do, but the baseline should always be that regardless of the complexity of the source, depending on how many files you have and such, that the linguist receives a simple output that they can process. The next thing that is more than vital and has proven to be a cornerstone in the evolution of translation management systems and translators themselves in terms of productivity and efficiency is visual mode. The general idea of translating a DITA file as is, without being able to visually understand it or see it in context, has been a continuous struggle. Imagine a translator opening a DITA file that contains one single sentence, which is part of a larger manual, some sort of technical document. And they have literally, at that point in time, no idea where that text appears, under which conditions, what it references, if there is an image, a graphic associated with it. So to a large extent, their eyes are closed. They need to blindly attempt to translate what they're seeing there and use their best judgment to produce a translation. The truth, however, is that due to ambiguity in language, that can easily create incorrect translations. And by extension, this creates unnecessary processes. This creates unnecessary problematic areas within the content stream, within the content flow. A linguist translates with eyes closed, in this case. Content is pushed back to the content source. And accordingly, during that process of rendering or publication, errors are potentially identified that have to go back to the linguist, and an extensive process of arbitration, proofreading, and potentially fine-tuning and polishing happens post-publication, post-return of content to the content source. On the flip side, though, what we do with XTM is we take this process, this visual rendering of the actual files upstream. We enable linguists to not only join the files, as I said before, when we're talking about a large array of data files, and see them properly and in order and understand where everything is at. But we also extend that capability one step further, which is by allowing them to visually preview and see how the content will be rendered directly within the translation environment. So instead of going and creating more process steps, many of them occurring post delivery of the content back to the content source, we take this entire process upstream and we allow the linguist or linguists to perform a visual recognition of the file as they are translating the content. This all, however, in a very, very, very agile world, is only covering part or addressing part of the problematic areas. I mentioned again the keyword before of streamlining, and inevitably streamlining the process of localization, of structured content, of data is not possible unless the content management system, the content source, and the translation management system talk to each other. And by that, I mean deep, direct handshakes that enable these systems to effectively communicate. We produce massive, massive volumes of content. Somebody has to manage that. Somebody has to push it from one system to the other. Somebody has to manage it in both systems. If we move away from that definition, what is definitely feasible here, and that's what we have achieved with XTM Cloud, is to allow the content source to submit the content directly to the translation management system, automatically even, or by user selection, and then effectively once the content is translated in the TMS, in the translation management system, to push it back to the content source without actual human intervention. This connector that we have in place with Adobe Experience Manager ensures that seamless, automated flow between the two systems. Streamlining has never been more approachable as a concept, rather than now that these technologies are in place. And we will tie it all in together at the end of this presentation. Connectors, and this specific connector that we have in place for Adobe Experience Manager, fundamentally changes the way that these two interact with one another. It fundamentally changes and shifts the attention from micromanaging files and clicking buttons and transferring files back and forth to where it actually matters. This is the result of this. The ability to control this deep handshake, your translation management system from within Adobe Experience Manager, is the shift of the paradigm. You don't need to operate in multiple systems to manage the content. It should actually all happen in the content source. And with the connector that we have in place at the moment, that becomes reality. You manage your content, and as you're managing that content, you are enabled from within Adobe Experience Manager to submit it for translation to XTM without even having to open XTM Cloud. Everything is fully automated. The content will be submitted to XTM. XTM will accordingly process it, analyze it, parse it, provide metrics, assign users, enable them to translate within the same environment, join the files as required and as it sees fit for the purpose so that users can get a true, proper experience. And on top of that, also visually render the file for them as being seen here, so that not only they have been empowered to work in a cloud-based solution that simplifies their daily interactions with the translation tool, but they also can take one of the difficult and, as I said before, post-publication processes of proofreading, of improving upon that, upstream and merge it with the actual act of translation. Once this process is done, you as the content manager, as the content owner, receive the result, and you know that the translator has seen this result in context. The translator understands fully what they have been translating and delivers a result that respects not only the linguistic requirements therein, because that's also, of course, a major milestone and major point of importance, but they also fully understand and respect the layout the structure that you were aiming for and produced it and maintain it in the target language. It is, of course, one of the major items that have been surfaced in our industry in the last few years, that is continuous localization. This connectivity that I just mentioned that we have been able to establish allows for a fully continuous agile process to be established. You maintain or curate your content in an agile way. You want to be only updating certain content blocks, parts of the entire content that you have created. And you don't want to submit this whole result all the time back for translation. Your goal is to minimize the effort on the source, but of course minimize them in the translation as well. You take the small bit of content that you've updated, and only that small bit of content goes for translation, comes back, and gets merged where it needs to fit in. By allowing these linguists to reduce the noise that they had to work with, reduce the noise of having to figure out what they're actually translating, reduce the noise of having to perform more workflow steps and be involved in various steps of the process, various parts of the process, before publication, after publication, we actually achieve something indirectly that is often not acknowledged, which is setting talent free. You have to always remember that translators, linguists are creative people. They perform an art. Translation is actually a very, very ancient craft that has been able to unite worlds or achieve or allow communication across spoken and written languages since the dawn of time. There's talent, and that talent is something you want to tap into. If linguists work through noisy or within noisy environments, they are not allowed to bring that talent to the table. They're not allowed to take the time to fully understand the text and produce extremely quality, high content in the target. They are forced to work with constraints, and those constraints undermine their ability to deliver quality, high content continually. And we believe strongly that this is a huge turning point of evolution within the industry as well. For the last decade or more, translators have been measured by productivity on a per word per day basis. And this still holds true. This hasn't changed. And of course, that is also how these people, predominantly freelancers, are being paid. This is how they generate revenue. But by maintaining that productivity and at the same time being able to produce better content because there's more time to focus on the essence, on what matters, is a huge evolutionary point within our industry that we're now seeing evolve or unfold before us. And this is also extends, of course, to all the participants of the project. Linguists is, of course, the cornerstone. They are the actual people performing that act of translating. But there's so many people involved in localization nowadays that translators alone are, of course, not enough in order to make a difference. We have project managers, content managers, documentation architects, content creators, content curators, engineers, goes on and on the list. So it would suffice to say here, from the localization to DITA, thank you. A strong thank you for taking that direction, for enabling us to also tap into this, follow the trend, streamline together and evolve side by side. Because now we focus on what matters. Every participant in the project has a purpose. We moved away from noisy, repetitive tasks, and now we have a tool, a system, a medium that actually makes life good. This seamless integration that we mentioned before, this connector that we have established, is not just a connector that allows for content to move from one system to another. Right? We mentioned that before, but perhaps as a repetition here, these two systems, AEM and XTM Cloud, seem to be made for each other. Our evolution from the XTM Cloud side has been such that it followed AEM closely, and it followed DITA, of course, closely. And the seamless integration that we actually have been able to create, to establish, has fundamentally evolved how we can approach this content, and has led us to the conclusion that these systems are made for each other. It works, and it does bring the results that you will be looking for. Mentioned that before, and I think it's one of the key elements of the streamlining. Hence, I would also like to emphasize on this one more time. Management, file management within the TMS is not something that linguists have to perform. It was done by them, by extension and by necessity, but it shouldn't be the case. Linguists should focus on what matters. Project managers should focus on what matters. And by that ability to structure the DITA map and manage it and merge it and mapping the localization success, we have come to the next level of evolution in localization of structured content. This is an instant process, something I haven't emphasized on just yet. The moment that Adobe Experience Manager will submit the DITA content to XTM, it is immediately analyzed, joined, visually rendered and represented to the linguist, the project managers, or whoever is involved. And that effectively means that apart from everything that we mentioned so far in terms of quality improvements, in terms of streamlining, we become faster, we become more accurate, and we become decisive. We can effectively maintain all the different voices in the content source and transfer those as a single front to the target. These thousands of voices represent these thousands of different DITA files that could potentially be part of a larger project, a larger document. All these would be handled individually in the past. That's no longer the case. With our technology, with our integration, they come together, and regardless of who produced each individual file, how it was inserted to the whole, it becomes part of a single voice that is meant to be translated and transferred to the target audience, to the target locale. We will keep on evolving. We have reached a strong point. We have reached the current pinnacle of evolution, but that's not the end. Anybody who would claim at this point that we cannot improve further, that we cannot evolve further, would actually be probably lying. Evolution is continuous, we all know that. And especially in the context of DITA and localization, there's still so much that can be done. We have integrations, we have deep connectors, direct connectors between the systems. We have respect for the complexity of the structure that is necessary many times. We understand the need to visually render the content for the linguists, but there's definitely more that we can achieve. Over the next few years, as has been the paradigm up until now, as DITA evolves, we will continue evolving with it. As DITA introduces new concepts to the structured content world, the localization world will follow. The pioneer will introduce, and streamlining will be achieved on both ends. To maintain the brand value in all languages, you need to remember two things that I mentioned at the beginning. Garbage in, garbage out, and streamlining. Streamlining by extension in the localization industry. By considering those when you produce your content, when you structure your content, when you maintain your content, you can look at maintaining your brand value in all languages, in any languages. The content is what defines it. The source quality is what defines it. That will allow you to then establish proper localization processes and adopt proper localization technology in order to ensure that your brand value is being maintained. It is vital, more than vital, to consider contextualizing your localization data. Linguists need to see context. They need to understand in all facets what they're translating. If that is not the case, you cannot expect them to produce perfect results. You cannot expect them to understand what they're translating and, of course, understand the target and produce the best possible result. This accelerates the process. It shaves off unnecessary workflow steps. It improves the quality. It potentially even lowers the costs. It is to your benefit. Continuous localization. As it stands today, we're talking about those direct integrations, the connections between systems. This will be maintained. It has to evolve further. We have to achieve higher degrees of automation than we have today. A potentially human-triggered operation can become an automated operation in the future. We already have come to a very long way. And from 10 years ago to today, there is a massive visible difference in how the entire flow goes. Continuous localization is here to stay. Continuous localization is something that is required. Bite-sized and content drops are something all the more frequent that we're seeing, and that will only continue. Without automation, we cannot in any way assume or hope that the individual people within the process, involved in the process, can maximize their creativity. We have an obligation to find ways to make their life easier. If we make their life easier, if we reduce the noise that they have to process, what we effectively achieve is that we expose that talent. We allow that talent to go in and do the best that they can in their individual role within the process. Thank you very much.
Good evening, wherever you are on this planet. My name is Jan Graat. I'm speaking from Amsterdam, Netherlands. And today I'm going to talk to you about conversion, and especially about conversion using FrameMaker in a way that doesn't stop all of your production for a long time while you're moving everything into a new system. This is why I chose a title. Everybody knows in Formula One, it's essential that you keep those cars stopping as short as possible. Red Bull has the world record for a pit stop where they change all 4 tires in 1.88 seconds. That is just unbelievable. Why is there so much work on getting the pit stop so fast? Because when you're not moving, your competition is. And that's exactly the same as in the business world. If you're taking a lot of time to move your content into a structured format and into a structured system, etc., and all the time you cannot produce publications, you cannot produce manuals for your products, etc., your competition is getting ahead of you. So it's essential to find a process that will be as non-intrusive as possible. That's what I'm going to show you today. First, a couple of words about myself. As you can see, I'm Dutch. I'm sometimes known as the geek philosopher. I studied physics, psychology, philosophy, and I taught myself programming. Basically, everything with a P, you could say. I'm also known sometimes as the frame tamer. I've been working with FrameMaker since more than 30 years, right from the beginning. And after writing lots of manuals for 10 or 15 years, I got a little bored and I taught myself programming, especially in the scripting language that is part of the FrameMaker product. So I basically make FrameMaker do stuff that were not included in the product out of the box. In fact, you can see my middle initials. My parents knew what I was going to do later in life, because hey, I was made to do this kind of work, right? So let's talk about the topic for today. Every company that has been existing for a little bit more than just a couple of years. So every company that's not a startup has legacy documentation. And the legacy documentation has received a lot of attention in the past. And even though you didn't write your stuff in a structured manner in a standard like DITA, it is still valuable. It is information. There's been a lot of reviewing. There's been a lot of work to create documents that are correct for your products. So they represent value. Now, legacy documents do, sometimes, well, actually very often, in the FrameMaker world, these are called unstructured documents. And I tend to disagree because there is structure in your documents. The structure is just, it is implicit. It is implicit. It is implied by the formatting that you apply to those sentences. If I look at the first sentence, then it's very clear to me as a user that that is a title. You do this by applying a format tag, heading 1, or title, or whatever the format tags are in your organization. You choose the formats to indicate what the intended structure of your content should be and how it's going to be read by your user. So we will always need the formatting because that's the only thing that the user of your documentation has to figure out the structure of your document. So there is no such thing as unstructured documentation, unless if everything is in normal and there's no change in formatting whatsoever. That is truly unstructured. But everything else is format-based structure. So it is still structured documentation, but the formatting is the way that the structure is indicated. And what we do in conversion is we formalize the structure. This is my image of an XML document, because obviously structure in our world is based on XML. Everything today is based on XML. Even Word is XML, although I tend to call that XXXXML or OBSML because there's a lot of stuff in it that is not really required. If we look under the hood of an XML document, then you see a very clear organization. You see that there is a topic which has a title, there's a body, and inside the body you have paragraphs. The location of an element inside of this structure and the name of the element, if it's a P or a list item or whatever else you have in your document, that together determines what it will look like. So in the end, it may still look exactly the same, but now it is defined by the structure in your document and not by it's not the other way around, like the structure is inferred by the formatting. Now, to create DITA is different from how you were used to work, and it may require a lot of time, especially if you have to create DITA from scratch. You don't want to rewrite everything that you have. And the problem with companies who have a lot of legacy documentation is that they would like to take their documents with them into the DITA world. I assume that your documentation has been created in a sensible way, and there's a lot of it. If your company has been in existence for a long time and you keep producing similar kinds of products, then that documentation, that legacy documentation, is too valuable to leave behind. So you're faced with a tough choice between, basically you could send everything over to a professional company that does conversion to DITA, I'm not sure if they will do the best possible job because they don't know your content as well as you do. So, and it will still take time. They also need time to do it. They might need less time than you if you do it yourself. Then you will really spend a long time to convert everything into DITA before before you can then continue to work. And as I mentioned in the beginning during the title slide of my presentation, this is exactly the tough choice that I want to help companies to avoid by taking documents one at a time and converting a document whenever it comes up for editing anyway, because your content will change. If your products change, if there's some new options in the product, etc., you need to add those new options to the topics, to the manuals. So, and if your manuals are created, in sections, then one section will come up for editing at a time. It's not that you start editing the entire book in one go. So whenever there's a file that needs editing anyway, because an option has changed or something has been added or something has been removed, that's when, instead of opening the document in your old unstructured authoring environment, like in unstructured FrameMaker, instead of that, you open it after first converting it. And this is where FrameMaker has a unique capability that I have not seen in any other authoring system. In fact, FrameMaker is not just authoring, it's also a publication engine. So from a FrameMaker book, you can produce PDFs or CHUM or more modern WebHelp kinds of files, HTML pages, whatever you want to do, you can create from a FrameMaker book, which contains a bunch of FrameMaker files. Normally, your manuals will be separated into separate files and organized in the FrameMaker book file. Now, what we do in conversion, the way that I'm approaching conversion is one at a time. So you take a FrameMaker file, and before you do the editing, you do a very simple, straightforward, fast conversion process. Converting one single file doesn't really take more than, if it's a well-structured file, a well-organized file, I should say, then it just takes a couple of seconds. If it's less well-organized, you may have to adjust the content a little bit to make it fit to the structure that you have chosen for your structured documents. But in both cases, it's open the file, convert it to the XML standard that you chose. In our case, that would be DITA. And then it will still be in the same book, because FrameMaker doesn't care if there is a mix of structured and unstructured content in the book. It can still publish that to PDF, to WebHelp, to HTML5, whatever you want to have. So, and this is a truly unique capability of FrameMaker. You can work with a mix of structured and unstructured documents for as long as you need, until at a certain point in time, you will have all of your content converted to DITA. And then at that point, you can still use the book if you want to. If there's no reason to move into a component content management system, then hey, why not keep it this way? But if you do want to move it into a component content management system, this is the moment when you can move everything into a completely different system, and that will just take very little time before you can then move on to another type of publication engine. So what happens in this kind of non-intrusive conversion process, what needs to happen, of course, is that after conversion, your content should still look the same. This is a very important requirement for making it work. If you work one document at a time, the document after conversion should be looking almost exactly the same as before. So here you see examples that I took from an old conversion project that I did for a customer who are in software development. So they have a bunch of files. There were lots of files there. Under the hood, this is what it looks like. So before, there is no structure because it is unstructured FrameMaker. And after that, there is a data structure in there. In fact, in this case, that's not data, that's a special kind of XML, but that will be the same for a data file. So it's like you take the formatting, you lift up the formatting and you move this structure inside it, and then the formatting depends on the structure instead of having been applied explicitly. While I was thinking about this, while I was creating these slides, I was reminded by a little clip I saw on YouTube a long time ago, which is a trick that we all know. Let's look at that trick for a couple of seconds. And basically everybody knows this trick. Maybe not everybody can do it, but everybody knows it. You pull the sheet out from under the stuff on the table, and everything stays. Basically, what we're doing in conversion is the reverse. There you go. Just imagine that the white sheet is your structure. You push it into the document, and now everything that is on top of that structure will be derived from the structure instead of having been applied explicitly. I'm sorry for the low resolution of this image, but I didn't want to keep it from you. So let's come back to the conversion process. I have indicated that your legacy documentation is not really unstructured, it is format based, right? So you have your formats applied, and hopefully you have applied them via format tags. If you haven't, then you're in a bit of trouble, because then you will have to, then basically you will have to start applying format tags to everything before you can really do conversion, because the conversion relies on the formatting of your document, and it should be formalized. So you should always use format tags for paragraphs and for characters. Okay, so this is what the document looks like under the hood. You have heading 1, you have body, you have hyperlink for certain kinds of character styling, and you have bullet points, etc. Then these formats are written into a conversion table. This is a tool that is built into FrameMaker, the conversion table. But of course, you have to create that table. You have to tell FrameMaker, the conversion tool in FrameMaker, when you see this paragraph, heading 1, what do you do with it? Well, heading 1 becomes a title. And I put a qualifier so that later on I can wrap that title level 1 together with a body into a topic at that level 1. So, I'm not going to go into all the details here, but this is basically what conversion in FrameMaker, what it looks like, how it works. So you have a conversion table that indicates this element should be wrapped into that, or this content, this paragraph form with that particular paragraph format should be wrapped into a particular element, and that element can then be wrapped into higher level elements. So together with the conversion table and the document, FrameMaker creates your structured document. And then, as I mentioned, the position of the text in that structure is now determining what your formatting looks like. And obviously, if you do it correctly, then that formatting will not be changed, except that now, if you move content around, it will change formatting depending on where it is in the structure. And that is exactly what we want to achieve. It becomes much easier to move your content around. You don't have to worry about changing the formatting anymore, because the formatting is derived from the structure. Now, if you do conversion of a whole bunch of documents, then this will work very nicely if your original content was either very simple, or at least it has been formatted in a very, very consistent way. So only in cases where there was, there's a slight inconsistency, like there's a paragraph before the first title, that's something that we will not be able to map to DITA. So you will have to do something about it. You might think that those exceptions are only, are few and far apart, but you can believe me, I've done dozens of conversion projects for lots and lots of customers, and they all claim to have very well structured content. Well, this is more like reality. There's so many exceptions that it is really hard to do conversion, to do optimal conversion by only using the tools that FrameMaker is offering you, the conversion table, because that conversion table relies on a well-structured content, because it can only do a certain number of things. It can only wrap content into an element and wrap multiple elements into higher level elements. It cannot move stuff around, etc. So to make the process much more effective, I'm using scripting. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm sometimes known as the frame tamer. I create all kinds of scripts to make FrameMaker do all kinds of stuff in an automated way. And with scripting, you can basically do anything you like to your content in an organized manner. It's a programming language, and you can get to any element in your content. You can do anything that FrameMaker can do, manually using the user interface. You can also create a script that does this automatically. So there's a whole bunch of scripts that I have created in the past years to get over common problems in the conversion process. Quite often, authors have attached images to a title, which is not a really good idea. The image should really be in a separate paragraph, because if it's attached to the title, then in DITA it will also end up in the title, and you want to have it in the body. So to prevent the image from appearing inside of a title in a DITA topic, I take the image anchor, take it out of the title, and move it into the body, into the next paragraph, an empty paragraph. It doesn't matter what kind of paragraph it is, as long as it's not inside the title. That would be a typical small script that just runs through all the files and determines if there is any image anchor inside the title. If there is, it creates a new empty paragraph behind the title and then puts the image anchor there. Those kinds of simple fix-ups for your content, and they can be lots of them. Every customer has their own typical, structural, I wouldn't say errors, but structural problems that they have when we start converting to DITA. So there's a lot of pre-processing going on. And then, of course, after doing the pre-processing, you have the conversion. I will show a little bit of this in a live demo after the next couple of slides, but I'm just talking you through the process right now. After the conversion is done, obviously, there's always some stuff that the conversion table cannot do in terms of moving stuff in the structure. Once it is structured, we can start moving it around. And this is done by post-processing, either by scripting, again, or by a very powerful language that is named XSLT, or a method that's called XSLT, and that is based on XML. From XML, you can create any other kind of XML by using XSLT. So this is the third and essential step in my conversion process. Now, instead of having to call all of these functions one by one, which would be really complex and time-consuming, I've created a script that actually reads a configuration file to run a conversion pipeline, because every file you will have to do the same kinds of things. First, you have to check on those images in titles. Then you have to check if there's no empty rows in tables, etc., which mess up the result. All kinds of checks that you want to do, small scripts that you want to run in a certain order. All of that is defined in a pipeline. It's one XML file that describes exactly which steps need to be taken to do a full conversion. Then to configure that, of course, that should be easy, because you don't want to start doing all kinds of scripting, especially for every particular customer. So this is all described in an XML format, which describes what to do in what order. So these are just 3 parts of this configuration file that is interpreted by a script, and this is executed by the script. So it starts with removing empty table rows, moving image anchors, setting table row heights, etc. All kinds of things that are needed to optimize the result. Updating the conversion table is one of them. And then at a certain point, it will actually do the conversion. It will do the, that's the convert structure doc step that you see in the middle image. After that, it writes an XML file. That's an intermediate XML file, and that XML file is then transformed. You can see that on the right-hand side, you see an XSLT conversion XML to DITA. This is where the actual DITA is created. And the XSLT is much more powerful than any other tool, than the conversion table or than any scripting that you can do. And it is very efficient. So after that is done, then it is written to a DITA file, and then at the end I rename it to FrameMaker to make the book still work with all the files, even though there's a mix of FrameMaker and DITA files in there. Which brings us to time to show you all of this in a short demo. For this demo, I chose to use the Personal Spaceship user guide that comes with Adobe FrameMaker. I have it opened here, and basically we're doing one file at a time, as I explained in my presentation. So let's open a simple file. This one, it just has a title and a bunch of paragraphs. Now, I start conversion by choosing the conversion menu inside of the SID. SID is for Smart Information Design, and I convert the document. Now, this is a very simple document, and I've already set up the conversion table and all the code that is needed to make the conversion walk through completely. So you see now on this side, we have a DITA file with a topic, a title, a body, and a bunch of paragraphs. So basically, this is all you need to do to files that are very simple. And you can see here on the left-hand side, I actually renamed the DITA file. So this is an actual DITA file. You can see that on the little icon right here. I renamed it to .fm so that the book still has the same files in it. And as I mentioned before, FrameMaker doesn't care if there's a mix of binary FrameMaker files and DITA files in a book. You can still publish this book without any changes. All the lists, all the generated lists, everything will still work. I'm not going to show you that right now because that would take too much time, but I'm going to continue with converting another chapter. I'm opening this chapter. This, as you can see here, this is a FrameMaker file. There is no structure here on this in this file yet. I can close this legal FM, and I'm going to do the same step here. So I pick the file, I go to convert document, and you will see that it stops at a certain point where it cannot proceed any further. This is a point where there is a problem that you need to solve. For various kinds of reasons, some elements may not convert correctly, and in this case, the problem is very simple. The top level element has not been applied by the conversion table for whatever reason. The top level element should be chapter, so I click on this, I change it into chapter, and then I can determine that the document is valid. So at this point, I can save the document, and I simply continue where it has left off. So I simply choose the same convert document function again, and it will save everything to XML. It converts to DITA. This message will show up because it only shows up in my demo because I didn't bother to correctly create all the DTDs, etc., that are needed. If I just ignore that message, it will still open up. And you can see here that we have a data file. This is a database, so all the topics are, every heading here creates a new topic. So this is first topic, then you have a nested topic, etc. This is why I'm using the database data topic, so the generic data topic, the composite as they call it. And you can see here that all of the content is data. And if I click on validation, then you see this is actually valid data. And if you look through the file, you will see that all the formatting has been reapplied correctly. Now it's based on the data that is in the document instead of having the explicit format tags for paragraphs and for characters. And you can see this is pretty much, almost exactly the same as the original. There are some things that you still will have to solve, like here in this case, an image, the size of the image didn't come out, so you have to simply resize the image. And with that, small corrections will always have to be done in complex files. In this case, there's a video which cannot be represented by the data client, but this should still come out correctly when you decide to publish the book. And here on the left-hand side, you see now that there's not only the legal document is now structured, is now data, but also this general description. All the others are not yet. So again, the whole approach to the conversion process that I've created here is do this one by one. And the only thing you have to do is you choose this function, because this will start the pipeline and it will pick up where it left off after you have encountered any kind of problem in the conversion process. If you want to change the conversion table, you're not satisfied with the results of wrapping content into certain basic elements, you can manually make some changes to the conversion table. This is the first level of conversion where you wrap a paragraph into a basic element. And then in this second table, this is where the structure based on the basic elements, where the structure is created. So this is where you might want to make some changes to make your content into a better structure in DITA, map it to DITA in a better kind of way. Once you're done with this, once you have made changes to the conversion table, you simply save it and close it. And then the files that you have already converted, you can very easily revert to the original document. There is a function for that. Basically, before the conversion pipeline makes any changes to the document that would not be reversible, it creates a copy of the original document so that you can revert. Now you see there's no structure anymore, and you can redo the whole process with your improved conversion table. Obviously, in this case, we will still run into the same problem here, but that is easily resolved. And you save it, you continue the conversion process. We get all those nasty messages here because I didn't process the DTDs completely, but now you have your valid data topic again. And once you have all the topics converted to data, of course, you're free to move them elsewhere, to move them into a CCMS or whatever you want to do with it. The whole point about this presentation and about the conversion pipeline that I've built is that you want to do this one at a time. And once you have everything converted, then you're free to move wherever you want to move with your data content. So that's it for the demo. Let's return to the presentation, the last presentation slides. Okay, I hope you have seen enough to make you interested in this whole process. As I mentioned in the beginning, before the conversion, smart conversion is really about bringing your legacy documentation into a state that you want to have it in, which is an XML document. And in our case, that will be a DITA document. And with this one-by-one approach of conversion and making sure that you can still publish while you're doing the conversion, you might actually get that tiny bit of, tiny bit ahead that you need to win the race, as we have all seen in the past Formula One season. I'm Jan Graat for Smart Information Design. This is the website address where you can connect with me. And that's all from me for now. So let's move to the question and answers. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to eLearning with Adobe Captivate and how to incorporate your eLearning into Adobe RoboHelp, specifically RoboHelp 2020. Tell you a little bit about myself. This is Kevin Siegel. I am the founder and president of Icon Logic. I have been teaching for more than 30 years now, using RoboHelp since the very early days of RoboHelp's existence, going all the way back to when this product was owned by Blue Sky Software, then later eHelp Corporation, then Macromedia, and now with Adobe. And I've written books on RoboHelp going all the way back, I like to say, to the beginning of time. And during this session, I'm going to talk to you all and show you how to create software simulations with Adobe Captivate. And when we do that, I'm going to actually record my screen. And if you'd like to follow along, all you need is Adobe Captivate and Adobe RoboHelp. The trial versions of the software works fine. And when I'm using Captivate, I'm going to use the software to record software simulations of something very simple on my computer. I'm going to be using Notepad. So if you want to follow along with that, you'll be able to do every bit of this. I'm going to create software simulations in 4 different modes relatively quickly, and I'll explain the steps as I get to them. And again, you'll be able to follow along and practice if you'd like. And after I've created my e-learning content, I'm going to take that content into Adobe RoboHelp version 2020 and show you how that works. And then as I've got the content in my Adobe RoboHelp topic, I want to show you some techniques you can use to make it even easier for your learners to consume your e-learning content. And that's it. There are no slides in my presentation. This is all in the tool, using the tool, and learning how to incorporate. So let's go ahead and get started. So I am using my Windows machine, virtual machine today, but you can use RoboHelp and Captivate on the Mac as well. So what I've got installed on my PC today is the Adobe Technical Communication Suite, which I love, and includes FrameMaker, Captivate, RoboHelp. And I'm on subscription, of course. And so both of these tools will work together beautifully. But on the Mac side, this process works the same. So if you've got RoboHelp for the Mac and Captivate for the Mac, follow along just as I'm doing now. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to bring up Notepad just so we can practice what we're going to record together as a group. And I'm going to just type change my page orientation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the process of changing my page orientation in Notepad. So keep in mind that everything that I'm doing right now, you can do in any program on your computer, whether it's a desktop application or a web application, it doesn't matter. If Captivate can see it, you can capture your screen. So I'm going to run a rehearsal. This is what I'm going to capture with Captivate. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to choose Page Setup. I'm going to change the orientation to Landscape. You see where I'm pointing here? I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go back to the File menu, Page Setup, come on down here to Portrait, and OK. Now that's all I'm going to record. So if Captivate were actually recording me, I would press the End key on my keyboard to stop the recording, or whatever key you've come up with. It's a different key combination on the Mac. I do recommend, if you're using a Mac, get an extended keyboard so that you have the same types of keys that PC users have. You just have less trouble getting Captivate to stop the recording if you've got that extended Macintosh keyboard. And that's what I'm using today. I've got loaded on my system a Logitech keyboard that has an end key. So I'll be pressing that when I end my recording. Now, I'm going to switch to Adobe Captivate. Almost like I rehearsed this in advance, right? Captivate, ready to go. And I'm going to double click Software Simulation. And what happens on my screen is you get this red box right here. This red box is known as the capture area or the capture zone. I like to think of it as Captivate's single eyeball, with Captivate looking right through this red box, and anything inside that red is going to get captured. Anything outside the red is not going to get captured. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a window size. So you see it says custom size here. I'm going to change my size to a size that is more appropriate for someone on a mobile device, which is my likely target audience. So keep in mind that the output that we create with Captivate coming up is going to be HTML5. No Flash. Flash got deprecated a couple of years ago, so don't output Flash. Even though this version of Captivate will still let you output Flash, you output HTML5. And because it's outputting HTML5, my content will play on any kind of device: Mac, PC, laptop, desktop, tablet, phone, smartphone, doesn't matter. It'll all play. The output will scale up and down depending upon my device, because I can output my Captivate project to accommodate that. But it's all going into RoboHelp anyway in this instance. But certainly these Captivate projects can be uploaded to your web server independent of using RoboHelp. So if you output HTML5 with Captivate, it can go right to your web server. You do not have to go to RoboHelp. Of course, for this session, we are going to be going into RoboHelp so you can see how to create interactive help systems, right? So I'm going to choose 1280 by 720. That's an important size. And you can move this red box, by the way, just by dragging the edge, like I'm doing right now. That 1280 by 720 is an important size. Think 16 by 9 aspect ratio, meaning 16 across, 9 high, and you keep doubling the size. So 16 times 2, 9 times 2, 9 times 3, 9 times 4, and on it goes. 16 by 9 is a widescreen format, and that will match the majority of your end users. So I recommend definitely widescreen, if nothing else, 16 by 9 specifically. 16 by 9 is the recommended YouTube aspect ratio, 1280 by 720. It's not the only 16 by 9 aspect ratio, but it's the one that I typically go and use with all of my projects, unless a client specifically says, we need you to use this specific size. Otherwise, it's 1280 by 720. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my notepad window and kind of resize it so that it fits elegantly into the red box. So you see, I'm just kind of resizing it here. And at the bottom, I'm not resizing the red box. That would resize the capture window. It's staying at 1280 by 720. You see, I'm just pulling it over here as well. Now, if you're on a PC, you can also choose application and lock to the notepad window. That's not going to work so well on the Macintosh because of the way the Mac and the menu bar do not float within the window. So look at this. I'm going to resize my notepad window and just show you how that application setting works. It's kind of nice. So I'll come here to application and I'll choose notepad, right? And then I'll choose my custom size and go back to 1280 by 720. And you'll see here that the red box, the capture window, and notepad are the same size. It's kind of nice. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a recording type. And automatic over here means I want Captivate to pull all the screenshots, much like you'd get if you use Snagit. Manual mode means you've got to manually pull all the shots, and I don't want to be responsible for that. I want Captivate to do all the heavy lifting for me. Demo mode, assessment mode, training mode, custom mode. I'm going to turn on demo, which was already on, assessment, training. I'll leave custom for later, a little surprise coming with that. We're going to look at the settings for these three modes in just a second. Now, panning means capture something outside of the red box. In this instance, if I were to try to capture something on my desktop here, it would be completely disjointed and I wouldn't do it. But you might be recording a software simulation in a program that's got windows popping up all over your desktop, and you've got to move from one of these panels or windows or pods to another. That's where panning might come in handy. There are two options, automatic and manual, but for this session, I'm going to do no panning. I do tell people in my beginner Adobe Captivate classes, be careful with panning, because if you pan and you're not elegant with your moving around the screen, you end up with what I like to call the Blair Witch Project effect, where the camera is jerking all over the place. And I don't think you want that. Audio, certainly do recommend audio for your e-learning. It has been proven in my experience that voiceover audio enhances the learner experience, and I would recommend it wholeheartedly. I'm not going to muddy the waters for this session with audio. I'm just going to record the screen and then leave it to you to play with audio later if you'd like. So audio will be left off. System audio is kind of nice, by the way. System audio would pick up the sounds my computer is making that I would be hearing through my headset. I am wearing a headset right now. And during the recording process, those sounds will be picked up. So if you're using software that makes clanging noises or confirmation beeps, it would be a good idea to turn on system audio to pick up the sounds if you like. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to choose settings, and that's going to open up Captivate's preferences right quick. See there? And you've got a modes category, and in this drop-down menu, these modes match those checkboxes that we saw earlier. And I turned on demo, assessment, and training. Now, with demonstration mode selected, I just want you to notice that Captivate's going to automatically add the text captions. Captivate's going to automatically show my mouse location and movement, and it's going to add highlight boxes on click. Whatever any of those mean, we're going to see in a minute. These are the defaults. I have not done anything to change these default settings. Now I'm going to change the mode to assessment only because we also picked that on the previous screen, right? You did demo, assessment, and training. And in an assessment simulation, there are going to be no text captions, no mouse location and movement, and no highlight box on click. Again, whatever those are, you're not getting them, right? So in this instance, it's completely the reverse of a demonstration. Instead, with an assessment, you're getting these things called click boxes. What are those? Those are interactive hotspots that are going to get added during the recording process that is going to make this an interactive simulation. It's going to be fantastic. Failure captions will let the learner know they didn't do the clicks correctly, which is also going to be awesome, getting some feedback. Now I'm going to change my mode here to training simulation. And the only thing that's changed now is hint captions have been turned on. So in a training simulation, you think of it as a kinder, gentler kind of a learning experience. So if the learner moves their mouse close to where they're supposed to click on those click boxes, they'll get some feedback. If they click on the wrong place, they'll get some feedback. If they do the step correctly, good to go. These are all defaults again. I haven't changed anything. Matter of fact, if you click Restore Defaults, you can prove that, right? Hit Restore Defaults. You'll see that these are the things that are checked by default out of the box, meaning whatever I get right now that you're going to see live is what you get out of the box. So there's nothing special you have to do. You just have to kind of get out of the way. Now, before I click OK and record my simulation, I do want to check out the keyboard shortcuts. I mentioned the End key earlier. I'll go to Keys Global, and you'll notice the stop recording key is End, The Macintosh users, you'll know right away that that is not the same thing on yours. It's a series of 3 keys. That's what I recommend. You click in this box and you can type any key on your keyboard, really. Like I'll do Control S right now, and I've changed the keyboard shortcut. Of course, if I click Restore Defaults, it puts it back to End. And I'm going to go with the default. You change your keyboard shortcuts if you feel like you need to, because maybe there's something on your computer that's conflicting with recording. Like maybe you've got Snagit and the End key with Snagit launches. Okay, so change the key here. All right, that's it. I'm going to click OK. And I go back to that control panel now, ready to record. Remember, when I get done recording, it's the End key that I'm going to press. So I'm going to click record. I get a 3, 2, 1 countdown. And you can just take a breath. Whew, you don't have to race through the recording. Captivate's only going to pull screen captures if you click your mouse. So all this nonsense that I'm doing with my mouse right now isn't being captured. So I'm going to go to the File menu. There was a screen sound effect. I'm not sure if you heard that through my headset, but it did pick up the sound effect. Page setup, more screenshots, landscape. Okay. I do recommend that you go nice and smooth and steady as you do your recording. Don't go too fast. You can go slower if you want. Slower is probably better. And okay. And do y'all remember the keyboard shortcut to stop the recording? Do you remember what it was? The End key, which I pressed just now. And that's going to have Captivate create my software simulations for me. Now check this out. Again, this is straight out of the box. And by the way, to check your version of Captivate, you go to the Help menu and you choose About Adobe Captivate. And I believe, 11.8 point something, something, something. Those are the latest. Adobe did release an update for operating systems compliance not too long ago. So check your settings, and if you think you don't have the right version of Captivate, you can go to your Help menu and choose Check for Updates and see if you can get the latest and greatest. Okay? Check for Updates is right here. All right, so I've got 3 projects open on my computer. A training one, an assessment one, and a demo one. And you can see I can switch between them by clicking their tab with my mouse here. So on the demo one, switch to the demo one if you're following along with me. And I'm going to go to the preview tool and choose project. Let it generate its preview. Going to click the autoplay icon. My hands are off the mouse completely now. Check it out. Everything I did was recorded. I did this live. I did not have a safety net. Yes, I've done this before, so I pretty much know what's going to happen, but I did not pre-record this demo you're seeing on screen. I've been doing this for years, folks, and I still find this is like a wonder that Captivate does all the screen captures for me and writes the content. I just love it. So I'm going to rewind so we can see that again. And I love how the mouse is basically moving and showing me. But what I don't love about this is perhaps the look of the captions with the gray and the black text. It's totally editable. What I also may not appreciate and would want more control of is the fact that this is not interactive. I have to sit and watch. And certainly by sitting and watching, you can learn. Sure, pay attention, you'll learn. But I am a firm believer that you will learn more and you will learn better and you will retain longer if you actually do. Let me close the preview here. That's this little X in the upper right. Now don't click this X. That's a fake close. That's the one from your screen recording. I always giggle when I see my students try to click this one and it's not closing. You see, I'm clicking it. It's because that's fake. This is the real one, so I'll click it. Now, I'm going to switch to the assessment. Remember, Captivate recorded 3 projects because I did 3 checkboxes before I hit the recorder. And I'm going to preview this one. So again, the preview to project. This gives me a reasonable facsimile of my end product from my end users. And we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the play button. And you notice this time there is no mouse moving around the screen, right? There's nothing. That's my mouse, but there's nothing happening in my demo because this is not a demo. This is a simulation. So I'm supposed to go to the file menu, right? But instead I go to format and I get a failure message. Reminder that the appearance of the caption and its size can be customized. So I'll click format again. And I think that the word item is cut off. I can edit all of that in production. I'm going to do the step correctly. I'm going to go to file and the simulation moves forward like Notepad would. So to me as the learner, this feels like I'm using Notepad, not a simulation of Notepad. I can't do anything I want. Like if I click open, that's a failure. But if I choose page setup, that's a successful click. I move forward. I go to landscape. So you check it out. I am completely now interacting with a software simulation. You guys digging this? I am. And okay, I'll close the preview. I'm going to move to the training one. I'm going to preview the project. We do a lot of stir and repeat here, just stir, repeat, stir, repeat. So as you work with me, you'll see that I just do the same things over and over and over again so you all can get that repetition. So I previewed the project. I'm waiting again for my machine to catch up to me. Autoplay. Now, if I hover above the file menu, you can see the hint caption. Do you see that? Otherwise, this simulation is exactly the same as the assessment. If I make a mistake, I'll get the failure. If I'm a mouse wiggler, not a mouse clicker, nothing happens. If I click, failure. If I move my mouse in an exploratory way, get close, there you go, and I'll click. You get the idea, right? That's the hint. Let me close the preview. So I loved the demo. I love the fact that Captivate put the captions in. I don't know how I feel about the mouse, but okay, the mouse is moving around. That's cool. The assessment let me actually do it, but didn't give me any context, no information in advance of my click. The only way an assessment is going to be successful is if I am already shown the demonstration. So I have to watch a demo or be shown how to do it. Then you're going to assess that I can actually do it. Seems fair to me. And the training one is the same as an assessment, only kinder, gentler. And as far as I'm concerned, all three modes are awesome. If I had all the time in the world, I'd create all three modes, put them out on my web server, bring them into RoboHelp, and let the learner go through this less than 3 times. But that is not reality. In reality, you're only going to get one shot at this, really, for a learner who is stressed out and busy. And I think you got to maximize their experience with your lesson. So I'm going to close all 3 of these recordings. C'est la vie. Goodbye, goodbye, and goodbye. And I'll start with nothing again. And I'm simply going to tell Captivate to make another software simulation. So on the new tab, I double click software simulation, right? And Captivate remembers what I did last. So the screen is ready to go, except I'm going to make a change. I'm going to turn on custom, and I'm going to turn off the other 3. Custom is the most powerful of all the modes that have ever been. I love it. Let me show you it. I'll click settings. I'll change the mode to custom. Now, here's the thing. There is a reason that most people don't use custom mode out of the box. Most people actually create demonstrations. And it's not because demonstration is the best. It's because people don't understand how to set up custom mode. So let me show you. You turn on text captions. You turn on click boxes. You turn on failure captions. Why? Text captions are going to add the instructions to your Captivate presentation, right? That tell the learner what they're supposed to be doing. And again, you can edit those in post-production so you can add more context. Why are you doing what you're doing, which I think is important. Click boxes is going to make your recording interactive out of the box. Interactivity is good. Let the learner do it. And of course, you want feedback if the learner does the step wrong. Most adults appreciate plain talk. They did something wrong. Tell me what I did wrong. Success captions would be positive reinforcement for the click, but I don't think you need that for most adult learners. Maybe with children you'll need it, but not with adults. And for most of my audience, we're training adults, not children. So we tend to not do positive reinforcement. We do negative reinforcement written in a kindler, gentler way. You don't have to be mean about it with those failure captions. All right, that's it. These are the 3 settings. Take a snapshot of that, right? And I'll click OK. And I'll record. Again, 3, 2, 1. And off we go, taking our time. File menu. Page setup. Landscape. OK. Back to file. Page setup. Portrait. OK. End. OK. Preview the project. Check this out. You guys ready for this? I don't think you're ready for this. You might be ready for this. I'm filling time for the generation to finish. It's like watching water boil. Here we go. Autoplay. I'm clicking where it says to click. It's working. Tell me to click page setup. I make a mistake. Gives me failure message. I click page setup. Landscape. You see I'm doing this? This is just awesome. All right, let me close the preview. Be a good idea to save my project now. I hate to crash and lose this. This is awesome. So I'm going to save. And I'm going to save it to my C drive. And I've already got a folder set up here called RoboHelp 2020 Data. You can download that folder from the IconLogic website, data files. So go to iconlogic.com, data files. You'll find these assets if you'd like to download them. The RoboHelp 2020 data assets are free to download and play with. I'm going to save this project into my eLearning folder, which is, again, I already set up in advance. And I'm going to call this my recording. Clever, right? I've already got 3 other Captivate projects in there, but this will do. Now, I told you you can edit this project post-production. So this caption right here, which I can move around, I can resize it if I think it's too small, right? Easy enough. But what I also love about this is I can go to my properties panel. The style being used is called default failure shape style. I'm going to change my font to Verdana, right down here. I'm going to change my size to 15. Change here on screen. The change has not affected any other slides. If I go to another slide, notice that this font and size change did not happen. I go back to slide 1. I select the caption that I've just changed. I come over here to the little menu to the right of style name, and I choose Save Changes to the Existing Style. And that's going to impact every failure caption in my project. Check it out. Right, nice. I'll come back up here to slide number 1. I'll select this caption, which is using this by default. It says it's using default capture caption style. I'm going to change the style to, let's see, Halo Blue. And I'm going to change my font to Verdana. I'll change my size to 15. And then I'll save the changes to the existing style. And if it didn't work, let me see what's going on here with slide number 2. So I got some overrides here. So I'm going to check this little box here, replace modified styles. Check this out. I'm going to run this routine again. Replace modified styles is basically going to say anything that's not following the style is going to get wiped out clean. So I'm going to go to the Halo Blue again. Font is Verdana. Size is 15. Remember now, doing the steps again, except I've checked replace modified styles. Now if I come over to my little menu here and save changes to existing style, I'm being told, hey, you're basically overwriting all your styles. I'll just click OK to that. And let me see now. Look at that. I made it see things my way, right? All the captions are halo blue. So bottom line is you can completely customize the look and feel of your captions. I'll put this failure, by the way, back where it was, kind of right about that position. And I'll save. And now I'm going to publish, right? I'm going to publish, and I'm going to get this project into Adobe RoboHelp. I'm going to do it live with you. So if something goes horribly wrong, you'll be there to experience it. So won't that be fun if something goes wrong for me, you'll get to see me try to scramble and fix it. So File, Publish. So I'm going to leave it as my recording. I'm going to target that same C drive where I've got my RoboHelp 2020 data folder, and I do have my eLearning folder. And I'm going to make a folder called Adobe, and I'll select that folder. And I'm going to publish as HTML5. Remember, even though Swift Flash is still available in RoboHelp, don't publish as that format. The next version of Captivate will not have Flash. Flash got deprecated at the end of 2020, so it's been a while now. I'm not going to have to zip. I'm not going to worry about fonts because I use really standard fonts. I am going to turn on scalable HTML content so that my lesson will get bigger or smaller for me automatically. If I'm the learner and I've got a big screen versus a small screen, it won't matter. The lesson will scale up and down. That's nice. All right, I'm going to click Publish. It'll ask me if I want to look at the final results. Yes, I do want to take a look at this. I've been working hard. And here is my finished lesson that I recorded with you live. You can see the captions have been updated. And I'll show you the failure. That's been updated as well. Nice, right? I love this. All right, I'll close the browser and I'll save my Captivate project. Captivate does not have to be running if you want to integrate with RoboHelp. So now I'll switch to RoboHelp. And I have opened up the project from the RoboHelp 2020 data folder called Images and Multimedia. So if you want to follow along exactly what I'm doing, you can open up that project because I'm trying to save you some of the legwork of making topics in RoboHelp. That's not what this is about. This is about integrating e-learning. And if you take a look at my topics here, I've got one called the Learning Center. And I'm going to press Enter here. And I'm going to type the recording I did live with all of you. And this is using the heading style. So I'll come over here to my styles tool. It's going to use my heading 2 style. So there you got that. So just got 4 paragraphs here and I'm going to press enter. So now what I want to do is I want to integrate into this topic that RoboHelp, that Captivate lesson that I just recorded. So there is an icon here at the top of the screen, a little toolbar, and one of the tools is for multimedia. And if you click that, isn't this convenient? Adobe has added in their Adobe RoboHelp tool an option to import Adobe Captivate Demo. I'll click that. I'm going to let me press cancel first. I'm actually going to go to my assets and I'm going to import the Adobe Captivate demo. Let me do it this way. And I'm going to navigate to my RoboHelp projects and I'm going to open up from data, I should say. I'm going to open up eLearning. I'm going to open up Adobe. I'm going to open up that recording that I published, and I'm going to bring in the index page. And that makes this CPZ file, right? Now, I started going through this icon here and realized I don't have to do that. I'm just going to bring it into my project. Here it is as a CPZ, which is kind of a weird extension because Captivate projects are CPTX files. CPTX files and CPZs, that doesn't work. Like, what's up with that? Well, CPZ is a special type of format that Adobe created to take all of those assets when you publish as HTML5 and make them an importable package into RoboHelp. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that CPZ file into my RoboHelp project, and there it is, shows up as this little box. Now, I can select this topic here, the Captivate lesson, and come over to my topic properties panel, and I can, under content here, this icon right here, change the size. So the width was 1280, so I can just type 1280 and get the size back to what I had it when I created the lesson. And it is 1280 by 720. So the fact this little padlock was on, when I do 1280 by 720, it becomes 720 for a height. So I'll save and I'll preview, which is this icon right here. And I'll click play and look at this. Totally interactive through my RoboHelp project, right? I'm going to go back to edit mode. Let me try this again, okay? So I'm going to delete the thing that I put into my Captivate project. I'm not going to resize it this time. You don't have to resize it. My personal opinion is that the CPZ, when you drop it into a RoboHelp topic, is too small, but you've seen now you can resize it. You drag the CPZ here. And you can leave it the size if you want, that's fine. Now, I'm going to do this a couple more times. So check it out. I'm going to bring in additional Captivate lessons. Right-click, import Adobe Captivate demo. Inside my eLearning folder, which is part of RoboHelp 2020 data, you can use mine or you can create your own, all right? You can do 3 or 4 different projects if you want. I'm going to bring in, copy and paste the index file. I'm going to bring in another one. From eLearning, save file. I'm going to bring in one more. From eLearning, start an application. Again, index. These projects are much older. The copy and paste, save file, start an application, they're much older. I've been using these projects for years. And of course, you saw me create the one called My Recording. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make space for each of these RoboHelp recordings. They're all interactive simulations, all created with that custom mode. And I'm going to take start an application and drop it in here. Save a file, drop it in here. Copy and paste. Let me scroll down. Drop it in here. Okay. Now, got 3 Captivate projects in one lesson, which can be definitely potentially overload for your learners. Let me see how this is going to look. The preview tool in the upper right. Okay. So there are my 3 lessons, each of them interactive. I'll hit autoplay for this start an application. And each of them, like I said, is letting me interact and do things on screen. Pretty cool, right? Now, I'm going to save. Just Control S to save. Now, the one final thing I want to show you. When you're putting content into a topic, there's no point in having your learners scroll 2.5 miles down to get to your content. I think each of these recordings are awesome. I think my users in my RoboHelp project are going to appreciate the interactivity. They're probably not going to appreciate just how busy this is going to get. And they may not even know that there is a lesson at the bottom because they didn't think about scrolling 2.5 miles down. So let me show you an alternative, okay? I'm going to select the first simulation and I'm going to cut it. Just Control X. Now there's no space between my paragraphs, right? I'm going to highlight the word start an application. So I'm going to highlight the heading, right? And there is an option here on your toolbar. If you run your mouse over the tools, one of the tools is going to be drop-down placeholder. So, of course, you just have to find it. It's this one here, create drop-down text. I don't know why I clicked this one. So ignore that, ignore my fumbling there. I was seduced by the plus sign. It's the tool over here, create drop-down text. I'll click that. And it then puts a little placeholder here. Type your drop-down content text here. I'm going to highlight that text and I'm going to paste the Captivate project back then. Notice that a link now has been created. Let me do this again. Select the second recording, cut it, get rid of the carriage return. Highlight the heading too. I'm using my tag selector here to make quick work out of that. Come to the tool without distracting you. Right here, create drop-down hotspot text. Highlight the placeholder text. I'm not getting the carriage return, just the text up to the carriage return, and I'm pasting. There's two. Let's do it again because it's so difficult, right? Get the third one, cut it, get rid of the carriage return. Highlight the H2. Boom, you can use your mouse if you want to. I did not. Use the drop-down text tool, highlight the placeholder text, paste, boom. Got one more to do. It's the one we did together. Select it, cut it, get rid of the carriage return. Highlight the heading 2. Come to the hotspot tool here to create the drop-down text. Scroll down just a little bit. Highlight that placeholder. Paste. Preview. Keep your fingers crossed. The vertical, the 2 miles of scrolling is gone. Where did my Captivate interactive e-learning go? To the link. The lesson opens. You play it. It's done. It's awesome. It's cool. I love it. Right? And again, if you think something up my sleeve, remember, I'll click the link to collapse, that we did this one together. So no fooling around. That's the one that we did. And it's just as interactive as it was when I created it. If you think that's too small, I already showed you on the edit or authoring window, you select your recording. I'll go to this one and you can choose on the top panel here, the content properties, you can change the width and the height. Again, if I change the width to 900, as long as this padlock is turned on, well, I tried to do 900. There it goes. 900 by 507. You can make these Captivate lessons as big as you want. All right, that's it. Let's take a look and see if there's any questions and answers. And I want to remind you all before I get too far afield here that I am Kevin Siegel. You'll find me at iconlogic.com. Send me an email, ksiegel@iconlogic.com if you have any questions after this session. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and that kind of stuff. All right, thank you. Let's see if there's any questions.